in it.
Welcome to my channel. Here, I don't just speak, but I invite you to think. Throughout my videos, I've questioned the deepest held beliefs, from philosophy, the dynamics of religion and faith, to personal identity. I ventured into the controversial because I know that only in honest, critical confrontation do we grow. My voice is a search for truth, unafraid of what is difficult. If you join this community today, you don't just watch, but you engage. Together, we open the door to a courageous dialogue, one that transforms us. Subscribe, share, and let's keep questioning, growing, and seeking truth together. Well, hello, everybody. Everybody's welcome. So glad to see everybody trickling in. Today's show is going to be a little bit different than I normally do, because normally I just have like one featured guest speaker, and then we open up the panel at the end to let everybody join the conversation. But today I've actually got a panel full of guest speakers who are each going to share a personal story that they have to bring to the table. I am extremely grateful for each one of the guests that we have today, for the fact that they're willing to share these stories. And I just want to tell you guys how important today's topic is. Even though I've never been a believer, I'm a lifelong agnostic, I guess you'd say. In fact, one of my panel members, I think Gretchen, I think one time she called me a gold star atheist or something like that. It was so funny. Anyway, but I don't have a deconstruction story myself, but I have been in these communities for a very long time. As many of you know, I've studied religion formally in college because of my passion for ancient history and philosophy. And so I engage with religious people and non-religious people all the time. We have a lot of discussions about religion on this channel. And I see a lot of animosity that happens between the two communities of believers and non-believers. And it's really interesting because so many of the theists will attack the non-theist, the one who's deconstructed, who's left the religion. And if you do any research into cult and cult behavior, you will see the exact same thing, which is why I'm convinced that religions, organized religions, actually are cults. There's no difference, practically speaking, between an organized religion and the way a cult behaves. And so when you leave a cult, when a person leaves a cult, they will be attacked, sometimes physically, but almost always verbally. They will be disowned, they will be rejected. And we see the same exact thing that happens when people leave organized religion. And I understand the psychology behind this, because there's so much that people, their lives are tied most often so much into these religious beliefs, because they become part of a religious community. You have your family members, especially for the many people who grew up in these religions, right? They were indoctrinated into these beliefs as a child by their parents, by their grandparents. So you've got immediate family members that now you're basically rejecting, is how they're taking it, even though what you're really doing is just rejecting a belief system, not necessarily people in all cases. There are toxic people, though. People who hold toxic beliefs, such as bigotry, and they use this religion to justify those beliefs. We're going to hear a little bit about that today, unfortunately. And so there are definitely toxic people, but most of it has to do with the fact that you're just rejecting an idea that is tied to somebody else's worldview. They just can't understand that. So they start throwing accusations like, oh, you just left the religion because you wanted to sin, or you were never really a true believer in the first place. And it's really disrespectful to accuse somebody of that, because we have no way of knowing somebody else's heart or mind. We have no way of really knowing their intentions, right? Whether somebody truly believes something or not, there's literally no way somebody else could know that. And so for them to attack people like this,
Just like money. Well, thank you, Cynthia. We super appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism that the believer has. So let me bring up my esteemed panel members here. I'm going to just, before we jump into it really quick, I think what we should do is actually, I guess what we'll do it this way. So we're just going to go around in a circle, clockwise formation. So that'll be the most organized, and just go ahead and introduce yourself, and then just get right into your deconstruction story. And we'll just go one at a time. And then at the end, we have DJ RP for those of you who don't know, and we're definitely going to be plugging the Async Network channel. By the way, we've got Gretchen, as you see down below me in my picture. That's Gretchen from the one of the hosts of the Async Network and organizers of that channel. I really love what they're doing. And that is a place where an atheist, a skeptic can go for a really solid community. And I think it's a good resource for people because they are on like almost every night and they do really long streams, and there's not a lot going on at night for people. So I think that's a great resource. I'm glad to have Gretchen here. And I understand, I think DJ RP is going to be here as well, popping in at some point. So looking forward to hearing.
Yeah, he's in chat right now.
Oh, he is?
Yep.
Or they are? Let me see.
Yeah, they are.
DJ, I've got a link. I set you a Discord. You might be still driving around. I'm not sure. They said they've got family obligations. So I'm sure they do have that link. So yeah, just let me know if you need me to send you another link. Anyway, at the end of this, we will open up the panel for people to join the conversation. If you have any questions for the guests, or if you want to share your own story, you're welcome to do that. The one thing I always have a rule here that people need to be respectful of each other. And I usually give people kind of a leeway to expose themselves as, whatever ideas they have. But I'm going to be like running a really tight ship today, just given the personal nature of the conversation. So I'm just not going to have any tolerance for people attacking today's guests or anybody else for that matter. Just because, like I said, this is very
important channel and helps spread it. And
so,
Gretchen says academic stolen back.
We're getting background noise from Gretchen from Justin's stream.
Oh, is that what that was? Okay.
I can't turn it off. Hold on.
To make it stop. Justin from Deconstruction Zone, if that's what you're talking about, he really smart guy. He does a really good job. Oh, nice. DJ RP's here right now. Here they are.
Hey there.
Here's the other
Apologies.
host of the Async Network. Welcome to the channel.
Hey, yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you. Now, I asked everybody else already if they're in a hurry. They said their time is pretty open. Do you need to go first, DJ, or do you want me to just go around the room?
Around the room is just fine.
Okay, perfect. And if it gets up against the clock as we start going on and you need to jump ahead of the line, I'm sure everybody here doesn't mind. So just let us know. Otherwise, what we're going to do is get right into it. Miles, do you want to go ahead and have the floor and take over here?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you again for having me on. So my name is Miles, and I'm currently 25. But at the time, I was a Christian until I was 20. Growing up, I was not someone who... I was lucky in terms of what type of Christianity I was raised in. It was more of the cafeteria Christian style, where, my parents, they read me the Bible for a bit, bits and pieces of it. And then we would occasionally go to church sometimes, for, say like a Christmas event or like an Easter event. And then maybe like one or two other times throughout the year. So, I was not someone who was like raised in the church in that way. And then probably when I hit middle school, I started going a little more, but that was because one of my friends invited me to a youth group that they had on Wednesday nights or whatever. So I would go to that for it was like a year or two that I did. And then eventually I started dating this one girl who was the most religious that I had dated at the time. And so she was wanting me to, she was like, oh, we should go to church more, because she went all the time. And I thought it was a lot, because I was like, they're not telling us any new stories. Nothing. There's nothing new. But she just wanted to keep going. I guess she really liked the community aspect of the church. And so she was like, "Oh, you should be more involved, or what? You should, try and be more involved." So I started going to like a small group that church had for like college age students. And every time I went, I was like, wow, there's just nothing additional that they're talking about. It's always just the exact same as whatever the previous week's sermon was. And then eventually one day, one of the people in the group asked me, they're like, "Oh, why do you keep coming every week if you feel like you're not getting much or anything out of it?" And that was the first time someone really ever challenged my beliefs ever in terms of that. Obviously I knew there were people of other religions and people who didn't believe, but I was never even asked really just to think about my own beliefs in any way for any amount of time. And so after that, I instantly stopped going because I was like, I'm not getting anything out of this. And so I started trying to read the Bible more. So I was like, I'm going to start at the beginning and then read the whole way through. And as you guys all probably know, it doesn't take very long till you start encountering problems. The order of creation, Noah's Ark, etc. And as I was reading a lot of these things for the first time, I'm like, wow, this is just wrong, or it doesn't make sense. Like, why? How is this like the story? How is this good? Like, especially when you get towards like Exodus and all the God commanding and allowing slavery. That was the first time I had encountered it. No one at any of the sermons is like, "Oh, love thy neighbor, treat everyone how you want to be treated." They weren't like, "And enslave your neighbors too." So I had then brought it up to the girl who I was dating. I was like, "Wow, like did you know this?" And she did not know that was written in the books either. And so I had written up a long list of, I wouldn't say a long list, but like a list of 10 questions that I was having. Like, how could Noah's Ark have happened if, all the animals can't fit on the boat? Why does God allow slavery? And she at the time was going to a Christian college as well. So I emailed it off to both a pastor at the church that we had been going to and a couple of theology teachers at her school. Didn't hear anything back from the theology professors, which like I can kind of see since I wasn't a student at the school. I can see why they wouldn't technically have wasted their time. But as for the pastor, after not hearing anything for like a month, I emailed out again, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't think you still wanted to talk about these questions." Like, no one had said anything to me. Like, why would I not want to when I'm actively reaching out? And so after that, I was like, okay, these guys have nothing. And at the similar time, I'd encountered many of the content creators that you guys are familiar with. The Line, the Atheist Experience, all of those similar channels. And I was like, okay, these guys have real answers to questions, even if the answer is, I don't know. And then all the Christian people I'm asking are like, you just got to have faith. And so at that point, once I noticed that, my belief completely fell apart. I just quit believing, and I didn't really try and replace it either. I know some people will, "Oh, it may not have been the God I was raised to believe. There's probably some other God or a higher power," but I just completely, quit believing in all of that. And so when I eventually told the girl I was dating, she was like, "Oh, she basically gave me an ultimatum of, you must believe, or this is over." So I ended things with her. And then I also worried a lot about potentially losing relationships with some of my family members, like my parents and my sisters. But I did not end up losing any relationships with them. So that was definitely good. And I've even had some of them who are willing to engage later on, with why I do not believe. And then even with me asking them questions, like, why do you believe? Should this convince you? Should this convince anyone? And so that's been good. And the only time I ever had someone try to convince me back into being a Christian was after one of my cousins ended up dying. So he was a Christian, and it was either after the wake or the funeral. We were riding back to the hotel, and my mom said something along the lines of, listening to all the people speak today, it really makes you think, like, that there's, something, good, or, something, true about Christianity. And I was extremely furious because, obviously I'm grieving that my cousin died. And then even if Christianity is true, that wouldn't make them dying a good thing. And it wouldn't make any of the sadness that people are feeling now less hurtful, that we will eventually see them later on. And so that was like the only negative aspect, again, when someone tried to bring me back. But I did not have any of the stuff that some people do. Like, I wasn't abused in the church. I didn't have any negative experiences. I only had positive experiences in church. And so those types of arguments, like, oh, it was just a particular individual is why you fell out and quit believing, just do not apply to me. And that is my deconstruction story.
It's really interesting because I'm wondering how most people that I talk to who have deconstructed did it before they were in their 40s, usually much younger than that. And I don't know how old you are. You sound a little bit younger, not immature at all, but just your voice sounds a little bit younger. Do you mind if I ask how old you were when you deconstructed?
I was 20 when I deconstructed.
Yeah, that's such a prime time because I have a dear friend of mine. I've known him for about 40 years. And in fact, he helped me get off the streets when I was a kid. I was living on the streets when I was a teenager, and he's one of the people that helped me. So I've been friends with him for many years. And I was talking to him at one point, and he was raised in a very orthodox, I think you call it, or traditional Christian household. Lived in a small hick town, and everybody was religious. Everybody went to the same church kind of thing. And he just grew up surrounded by his entire community, not just his family, but everybody he interacted with was religious. And I remember I was talking to him, it's about a year ago or so, and I was just talking to him about a historical thing between the book of Daniel gets so much history wrong, and talking about the Persian period, which is one of my favorite periods in ancient history to study. Actually, I was talking to my friend about this. Like, does this bother you that this guy who wrote this book is supposed to be like one of the king's advisors, so if anybody should know the history of Persia, you would think it would be this guy, that he gets this stuff wrong about Darius and et cetera, et cetera. And he just looked at me and he said, no matter what information you tell me, no matter what evidence you show me, there's nothing that could make me stop believing what I believe. And I don't know, it's almost like he punched me in the face or something like that with how stark that was, is because I just felt he was so attached to that belief system that literally, and I really respected the fact that at least he was being honest about it. You know what I mean? But for somebody like myself who wants to be aligned with the truth, it's much more important to me to be aligned with what we believe to be true, given the information that we have at hand. And we always have to be willing to admit that we might get new information at some point. We have to be humble and be willing to change our beliefs. For somebody like myself to hear somebody with a straight face just admit openly that there's no evidence that they could be shown that would change their mind. And I thought, well, he's in his 70s. He's believed this his entire life. At this point, he's not in good health, generally speaking. And so he probably thinks he's going to be dead in the next 10 years. He probably does need to hold on to this for a lot of reasons, but I don't know. I still can't shake the feeling of uncomfortability that I get when I even just repeat that story. It's so wild. But I think that if you're younger, the chances of you getting out of this are much, much higher. We'll see as we go throughout, but I just really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us. Thank you so much, Miles.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, but what you were saying though about how your friend is like in it, I guess in his 40s or so, 50s. I don't know how old he is.
Oh, we've been friends for 40 years. That just tells you how old I am too. But yeah, he's like 70 years old. I think he's about 20 years older than I am. So yeah, he's about 70 now.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest factors in terms of someone's willingness to look at their belief system and assess it in that way and risk deconstructing from their current beliefs has to do with how much time someone has spent in it. Like someone who has spent a lot of time in a religious environment and did a lot of religious community-based things in their church or whatever, they may be younger, but they could have spent an equivalent amount of time as someone in their 70s did if they weren't as deeply involved.
I think there are a lot of factors. It's almost like a comorbidity kind of a concept, except with psychology instead of a physical ailment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think there is, and we all are unique individuals. Even though I believe we're all equals because we're all Homo sapiens, and so we have the same basic needs, the same starting point. We're all unique individuals. Our brains develop completely differently. You put two people in the exact same situation, you're not going to get two people to come out of that situation, not exactly the same. And so there's a lot of things that factor into why people believe things, what they hold to be true. And I think most people in my community understand that we don't actually control what we believe, right? And I don't believe in free will, libertarian free will. I'm what they call a soft determinist. So I believe that we do have the ability to make choices, but our choices are extremely limited and always affected by external factors. So when you combine those two things, I do have a soft spot for people having bad beliefs. I try to be patient with people because I understand that a lot of it is out of their control, and when we raise our children, this is one of the reasons I talk so much about this. I get involved in some of the things I get involved in, like that Ark Encounter protest, for example, because that Ark Encounter out there in Kentucky is indoctrinating children to believing the earth is only 6,000 years old. That's insane. To believe that Noah and his kids are riding dinosaurs around the ark. That's just so insane. And it's harmful to children because they grow up holding on to these beliefs that you can't trust science, and et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that there's a lot that factors into it that we need to be sensitive to. And anyway, so I'll move on to the next person as well, because I want to hear from Jack. And Jack, I don't know, was that a kitty cat or something I saw sneak into the...
No, that's my dog, Katya.
Oh, we love animals around here. I miss my doggies so much. After our last dog finally passed away, it just breaks your heart. My wife and I never had kids, so the dogs were like our kids. I hate to say it, but we just spoiled the hell out of them. And when they pass, like a little piece of your heart breaks, and there's nothing that can fill it, So now I just feed the birds and the squirrels. That's about as close as I get to having a pet. But yeah, I love to see everybody else's animals. Thank you for sharing that with us. So go ahead, brother. You've got the floor, and love to hear your story.
Okay, yeah. So my name's Jack, and my parents were Christian, or they still are Christian. But I only had one grandparent that was atheist, but she never shared her beliefs when I was a young child. All the other grandparents were Christian. Much of my family were Christian, or are Christian. And my northern grandma, if you live in the States, you know that there's like a northern southern divide when it comes to religion, typically speaking. Both are still pretty religious, but the North is generally considered more secular than the South. My northern grandma is the religious one, and my southern grandma is the atheist one. That'll be important later. But surprisingly, down here, I didn't go to church very often, at least for a lot that I can remember. When I was a young child, my sister was born 2 years after me, and my dad mostly worked while my mom was going to school. And that's about the time that my first memory of religion started. Um, they talked as if the God of the Bible was just something everyone knew to be true. I didn't have any early exposure to any other religions. I was in a small town, and I didn't even have anybody around me that would tell me about their view if they were an atheist. Like I said, my grandmother didn't, even though she was. Um, so, but if someone offered us to go to church, we would. We wouldn't just like actively seek out church. So I was kind of like a cafeteria Christian, like Miles. My mom went into the army when I was 6. She went to the reserves, and that was in 2002, I believe. And she said that since we weren't in an active war and regular troops would be shipped out first, that, she thought it would be fine, she'd still be in the States and everything. Well, it turns out it was cheaper to ship the reservists out with the ammo than it was to move the soldiers stationed to come pick up the ammo and then bring it back. So they sent the reservists instead of the active duty military members. So she was drafted to do logistics. And still no religious, like true religious involvement as a kid, but still Christian, I would say. While my mom was away, my dad cheated on her and then they got divorced. So we had visitation. So that also becomes relevant later. Actually, shortly. We had visitation with my dad, and shortly after that, my mom married my stepdad. And during visitation one summer, my northerner grandma took me to vacation Bible school. I don't remember a lot of it, just glimpses, just taught just generally about the idea of the God of the Bible and Jesus and so on. I just had a tentative grasp of it. But yeah, after my mom and my stepdad got married, things took a turn for the worst almost immediately. My stepdad was a monster. Um, Before my mom got married to him, he often just left us alone, me and my sister. Didn't really know much about him until after the wedding. On the day of the wedding, he got into a huge argument with my southern grandma because she dared to comment on his salt intake for his food, and he snapped at her. And it just went downhill from there. For the next 7 years, I was physically and emotionally abused. He would torture people and animals. He would make us torture animals under the threat of harm if we didn't. Um, so he kept us quiet about it because he said if we ever told anyone, he would kill us and our grandma if he after he's bailed out. And my dad wasn't able to keep up living near in the area and moved several states away. During this time, my mom and my stepfather kept my sister and I away from my dad, even for like summer visitation, as much as they could. And I would cry myself to sleep at night and praying for it to stop like every day. And for 6 of those years, I prayed and cried myself to sleep at night. My half brother was born in those years, and religion still wasn't big, but I was a full believer. Even when night after night I was shown that like prayer didn't work. But my stepdad's kid, he was treated better than us because he was blood. And in order to kind of get away from all that, I went to churches that my friends went to. And, I started picking up more of the Bible stories and stuff like that. And in late middle school, my first experience with a non-Christian happened. It was someone else in my school. I can't remember what she was doing, but I asked if she was scared that she might be going to hell because she was doing it. And she said she didn't believe in it. And that just, I don't know why, but it just like floored me. Cause like my entire life, I had been told to like, this is just what everybody knows is true. It was a small town. So like I didn't have any experience until now. So that stuck with me as a crazy thought, but I just brushed it off and kept believing. My dad came back the year after I stopped praying. I still believed, but honestly, I was just trying to survive in that situation, so I didn't really have the mental fortitude to like deconstruct. But I did have severe depression and PTSD flashbacks. But that was like between 9th and 10th grade summer break. And I begged my dad when he came back to move in with him because I was finally old enough to choose, according to Georgia law. He only had enough money at the time to take, he actually was in Tennessee, so this is North Georgia. He actually only had enough money to take care of me and not my sister, unfortunately. So I told him what was going on and stuff like that, but there was not really much he could do without evidence. So that summer, my dad lawyered up and got to keep me. And I was enrolled in school in Tennessee. And it was like day 2 or 3 of school, and I got a call from my mom. I wasn't allowed to talk about anything going on. And I remember because I forgot the key to open up the apartment and my dad was at work, so I was waiting outside until he came home. So I was feeling pretty crappy about that whenever my mom called me and she cussed me out. And then shortly after, my southern grandmother called me and cussed me out. She had no idea, remember, because well, we kept quiet about all of it. So later, whenever she found out, she apologized. So we're good there. So I realized after like being on the phone with them that like I couldn't be hurt really by them anymore. So I was free to explore my own ideas and I didn't have to stay in my small town and not see my friends. My dad was actually borderline neglectful. He wasn't really. He always made sure there was food and stuff like that, but he just had to work all the time in order to get my sister. So I a lot of times would stay at my friend's house because I couldn't go to my friend's house a lot of times. They could never come see me because of the stuff that was going on, and so I started gaining more experience with other people. It was a larger town than I used to live in. It was about 100 times larger. Um, so um, that's when I started critically thinking about what I actually did believe. A lot of the stuff that I was taught when I was younger was by my stepdad, and I had to unlearn a lot of that stuff. I just it was not good. I mean, I hate to say it, but that kind of shaped how I did things. Um, and looking back on it, it's just I have a hard time like forgiving myself for doing that stuff, even though I know like I was under threat, so like there was no other option. Um, so yeah, I started critically thinking and unlearning and dealing with PTSD as in my teens. Um, and didn't have any kind of medication or anything for it. it was just as much as I could deal with it. So I remember talking a lot to people about what happened to me, because I could bring it up now. And the religious people would always tell me about the story of Job, because this was a heavily Christian area. In fact, this was the center of the first ever trial that was broadcast over the radio. It was about whether they should teach evolution in school or not. That's where the town that this was at. So a very heavily Christian town. In fact, the guy who was advocating against the teaching of evolution in school was involved, and they have a college there named after him. So that's how it's a Christian college, Christian liberal arts college. So that's how just prominent Christianity is in that area. So I started critically reading the Bible and just realizing, like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And oh my gosh, like, there's child abuse in here too. Like, I'm just like, this can't, like, logically and just like ethically, I don't think could be true for the claims that they were making. And I just came to the realization one day that it wasn't real. It wasn't true. So while my pain wasn't the cause of my deconstruction, it still played like an initial role, because I stopped praying for it to end when I realized prayer didn't work. That was sort of the start. But I, after realizing that I was an atheist and talking to people and telling them how I felt and what I viewed and stuff like that, they started treating me a little differently. Most of them did. Not all of them did, but most of them did. And I got that not just from the people around me, but also like the institutions around me. For example, when I was going to high school, I was an athlete, and they would only give scholarships to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. One time, the school, it was, now granted, this was done by the students out of nowhere, but they started doing prayer circles, which I wasn't, I didn't really mind. But then they started getting bigger and bigger, and it was during lunch, like the beginning of lunch. And eventually it got to where it was blocking the doors of the cafeteria. So, and rather than doing something about it and like saying, hey, you can do whatever you want, just don't block the doors to the cafeteria, we had to go around and take the side entrance just to get into the cafeteria. So then later on, I was dating this girl, and she, her father was a pastor, and I took her to the dance or whatever, and we had a really good time. We were great. She was great. I was, doing me, and I bring her back to her place, and her dad comes out and starts chatting with me and chatting about how he's a pastor and that he's glad, that she had a good time and that, she was taken care of or whatever. And then he started bringing up religion, and I told him, well, I'm not a Christian, but I appreciate you, letting me take her out and stuff like that. And then he says, you're not religious? And I said, no, I don't believe it, but I don't have anything against you. And he said, well, I don't think that you should be dating my daughter anymore. And I said, why? And he said, because people shouldn't be unequally yoked in their relationship. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, according to my beliefs, and it's in the Bible, you can't be together. And that really broke my heart. And so yeah, I realized at that point that it's just I don't think that I don't mind if people have religion. I think we should support religious pluralism, but at the same time, if your religion is making you bigoted or it's making you, treat people differently, then that's just not something I can get behind. It's not something that I think is true, or should even be considered, in my opinion. But yeah, that's my deconstruction story. A little bit more on the post deconstruction too, but yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm trying to get this. Let's do this. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. There is so much on my mind listening to your story. I could just talk quite a bit about that, but I won't. I'll move on to the next people. But the one thing that it's really at the front of my mind that I will say is it's absolutely heartbreaking and insane at the same time that you went through all that and that you came out a functional human being on the back end of that. And again, I would say the same thing I said to Miles, that I think you're very fortunate to have gone through this at a young enough age to where you haven't been fully you haven't invested an entire lifetime into it yet, because you have your whole life ahead of you. I can see that you're still young and healthy. And I could tell, but by listening to you, having spoken to you a little bit, I'm a pretty good judge of character. It's a survival technique that you learn when you live on the streets and you do time in the pen and stuff like that. You learn how to judge people's characters very quickly, whether that they have integrity, they're trustworthy, so on and so forth. Obviously, I'm not a mind reader, but you do develop this people skill, and I can tell that you are a genuine human being and a caring human being. And I just can't believe that you're able to come out of all that so mentally healthy and well adjusted. And I'm just really happy for you that you have your whole life ahead of you, being able to think critically. I'm so sorry that you went through that too, for what it's worth. That's so tragic that probably most, if not all, of the people that you'd mentioned in your story won't come out of that at any point in their lives. They'll never.
I don't want them to ever have to go through that.
I mean, we don't want them to go through that to experience that rejection and that trauma. However, right. I would prefer that people could abandon the belief, and I don't think they ever will. And I don't know these people, just from what I'm hearing you say about them. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong, because a lot of these people, some of those people you're talking about, like your girlfriend, for example, when you're a young person and stuff, she's going to grow up to be an adult like you are now. And obviously she's going to be a voter, right? Yeah. And maybe a teacher, or who knows what path she's taken in her life. I mean, that's just one of the people in your story. So, but the part about your father and the animal abuse, that just, as an animal lover myself, like I mentioned about, like, our animals were like our kids. I feed the wild animals. I'm a very much into nature. I'm a river guide. I take people on guided river trips on kayaks and stuff like that. So I'm always out in nature. And animals, while I'm not a vegan, I do care about nature and animals very much. And it's just people who hurt animals. They say that this is one of the warning factor, or what do they say? Trigger fact, warning signs.
Yeah, warning signs for psychopathy. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
My stepdad is a psychopath. Now my mom and my stepdad have since split, and she has remarried, and he's an incredible man. He's an atheist too. But my mom's still Christian,
There is I'm happy for your mom, at least, that she's with a partner. It is interesting to me. In fact, I don't know about Gretchen. I don't know if anybody on this panel is married to a theist. I can't remember. I know Gretchen's married. I can't remember. Gretchen,
am.
is your husband a theist or atheist?
He's a Christian.
He is. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's what okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. It amazes me. I do know some people who actually do have relationships where one of them is a theist, one's an atheist, and I always have a lot of respect for that because it's about mutual respect and building a life around respect and not being building a life around these dogmatic ideas and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah.
we're gonna hear from you next. So, all right. In fact, let's get right
Well,
into it. Richard. Why don't you have
yeah.
it now? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, you were saying how I turned out like more, you know, uh, quote unquote normal, mentally strong after that whole thing. Unfortunately, my sister and my half brother have not turned out the same way. But I will say that I originally did not think that mental health medication was good. But after taking mental health medication and realizing just how much of my life was wasted in flashbacks, just day to day, I can't thank science enough, especially medical science, for that kind of reprieve and allowing me to deal with my emotions. And then therapy also goes a long way and to being able to cope with it and to adjust and learn. So yeah.
And this is really, I'm really glad you shared that because, just the truth of the matter is that I, in the past, had been very critical of things like anxiety medication, antidepressants and stuff. I went through a very difficult childhood and I ended up turning my life around at some point, thank goodness, and never had any kind of access to doctors and stuff. I did have access to a loving wife, during the most significant point in my life when I was really getting my shit together. But I really didn't have a lot of resources available to me, and so I just kind of had to do the work myself. And I always looked at those medications as being just kind of like pseudoscience and stuff. And I fully admit that I was absolutely wrong in seeing people that I've gotten to know closely who have used things like antidepressants and anxiety medication. They have helped them significantly. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not here to offer professional medical advice. Nobody here is on this panel, as far as I know, but
No.
I do regret the things that I've said to some people in the past about, oh, just toughen up kind of stuff. You could do it. And that's not fair to anybody. And that's not good advice. I do think we should be tough, but we should use the advancements in science to our advantage at all times, right? And medicine is one of the huge advancements that we've made and in progress in medicine. And so we need to, that's the whole reason of that is to improve our lives, right? And to make it so it's not so difficult. So I definitely recommend that people do look into talking to your doctor if you're having any anxiety issues. Look into counseling. These things can be extremely beneficial. And I'm really glad you pointed that out. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Gretchen, the floor is yours, sister.
Okay. So I guess I should start with my parents. My mom came from a Irish Catholic family, and two of her sisters went Pentecostal as soon as they were teenagers and dragged my mom along with them. So that's what my mom was about, still is to this day. And my dad is from a huge Mormon family straight from Salt Lake City. And they were nonplussed when he married a Christian, but they were, I guess, sated by the fact that my parents decided to raise us as Mormon. Only nobody told the family that my mom was also going to be raising us in her church too, so that we could all choose when we got old enough. And went like that until I was 9 and my parents got divorced. And then they started fighting over which religion we were going to be. So, yeah, my sisters and I, we just we did them both just to keep them both happy and to keep them from going at each other. And swallowed it. I got saved and baptized when I was 14 and just bought it and just incorporated it all. And that was just like the truth to me. So then I went in the army when I was 18, and within a year I married a Catholic guy. And I also ended up having a kid 9 months after I got married. And then another one right behind that one. And his Catholic family wanted the children christened in the Catholic Church because they were going to be Catholic. I was like, I don't think so. And they were like, well, what do you plan to do with them? I'm like, I don't know. I had no idea what I even was, really. I was like the only born again Mormon I knew. So it's like I have no idea. And that's when I decided to finally, for the first time, I read the Bible and I read the Book of Mormon and I even read some Catholic literature. And I was like, we're done here. I mean, I equate it to falling out of a tree because that's kind of what it felt like. It wasn't stressful. It wasn't hard. It took me probably maybe 6 months total. I'm definitely less than a year to go from born again Mormon to full blown atheist. Just because I decided to play detective and figure out what I actually believed and where that came from. And I didn't find it in any of those books. And I was like, all right, cool. This is just where I live now. And for a lot of years, I was just a soft atheist. Everybody, everyone could do what they wanted, and I didn't care. But when I got out of the army, I started working for the VA, and then I got involved in California politics. And that's when I realized that religion sucks, and it is screwing us over in the worst kind of way. So I kind of engaged and became an anti-theist because I don't think that religion is good, and I don't believe in a God, and I don't think anyone else should either because I don't like what it's doing to our society. But that's just me. And that's where I am today. And yeah, I am married to a Christian, but he's sort of like just a cultural Christian. I think he's been to church maybe like 10 times in his entire life. So it's never been an issue for us.
Now, would you say, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this because that blows me away. When you said, and I might have missed it, forgive me, but you said when you were a child, your parents had two
Mhm.
different versions of Christianity. One was a Mormon, I take it. Was your other parent a Catholic, or
Mhm.
did the Catholicism come once you got married?
Yeah, my mom grew up Catholic. My grandparents were Catholic, and they raised their 5 girls in the Catholic church and Catholic school and the whole bit. And as soon as they all got out of high school, they all went straight for the Pentecostal church for whatever reason. My
And so
grandma ended up with 3 Pentecostal, 1 atheist, and only one of the 5 girls is still a Catholic today. So,
So your childhood
um,
years, as you're developing, as your mind is developing and stuff like that, and you're watching the adults around you, you're trying to blend Catholicism with Mormonism. Is that what I'm understanding?
no, born again, Pentecostal, born again in
Okay.
Mormonism.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Okay. Even still though, that seems like
yeah.
wow, what a mind job.
It was rough when I was younger, but then, after I just like absorbed it, it I think in a weird way, it actually made deconstruction a lot easier for me because when you have to compare the Book of Mormon to anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's I mean, come on. It was You
Have
know,
you
it's almost like looking for truth in a Harry Potter book. You know, it's like, this is just stupid. And I'm like, and I think it just made it easier for me.
the
So
whole
what I always thought was like a curse that my parents gave me, it turned out, I think it helped me deconstruct faster than I normally would have. Because I hear other people's like horror deconstruction stories. Some people saying, "Oh, I've been doing it for 10 years," and I'm like, "Damn." I'm like, I guess I got super lucky.
it is interesting how everyone's experience is diverse, and your ability to, but I've always actually, ever since I've met you, which I've only got a chance to know you for a few months now, but I've been very impressed with you from the get-go. You seem like you're very grounded and a reasonable human being. You definitely hold firm beliefs, especially when it comes to politics, and I've
Yeah.
been really impressed with how much you know about politics, and I've admitted to you openly that I'm really, really ignorant when it comes to, and uninformed when it comes to a lot of politics. So
Mhm.
I'm really glad I've gotten a chance to meet you, and also Robin, who's in the chat. I don't know if she's still here. She said she had to go for a minute,
Yeah.
but Robin's really, really smart lady when it comes to politics and stuff. But
Oh yeah.
as much as you hold firm beliefs about things, you don't seem like a person who's unwilling to consider the other side. And I've listened to you and Arpy on your show. I try to stop in as much as
Mhm.
I can to support your guys' effort. I've been really impressed with the way you interact and engage with people when you do your debates. Have you gotten a chance to debate anybody on Mormonism? Have you had somebody stop by your show yet?
Yeah, we had a nice kid named Seth come by a couple of times.
How did that
Was
go?
hoping he pretty good. We were very gentle with him because I mean he was just a
He's so
kid.
close. He's so close.
Yeah. He's gonna deconstruct and he doesn't need us for that, but he definitely is. I mean, he's a physics major and yeah, he's gonna deconstruct. So but we were cool with him and I told him that the next time you come back, I'm gonna cook you on the Book of Mormon. And
Good for you.
okay.
Well, I'm
And
so glad that he found you guys as
he
a
never
resource.
did come back. Yeah. But I mean,
Well,
I have talked to a couple of Mormons on Taco's channel, and we'll see. Maybe I'll get to talk to them again.
I have to say that I've interacted with a few Mormon kids. They come to the door, ask,
Mhm.
sometimes in the neighborhood they'll walk around and ask if they could do, do your lawn or whatever, kind of thing. I never let them do anything, but
Right.
I always offer them like a glass of cold water or something, be friendly, and tell them I'm not religious, you're kind of waste your time there, but I'm happy to give you a glass of cold water or something like that. But I have to hand it to them. Every one of these kids seems extremely polite. What I've heard about Mormonism is really gross, but the
Yeah.
kids are super friendly.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure in the LDS church, and like I was never fully welcomed there because they knew we were going to church with our mom too, and so we were never really, and also it's different for girls in the Mormon church. I mean, they make sure that you're just being bred to be a wife and a breeder at that point, It, and they make sure and it's in the Book of Mormon,
Yeah. Yeah.
women just like the Bible, women are second class, humans in both books. So
It's one of the things that really pisses me off, actually, like literally gets me emotionally upset. The treatment of women is really gross, but what really pisses me off is that little girls grow up being indoctrinated with the idea that their whole purpose in life is to be a baby factory and a submissive wife. And I see it not just in Christianity, I see it in Islam and other religions as well. And I'm all for a woman, any human being, making whatever choices they want for themselves, as long as they're not hurting other people. And if a woman wants to grow up to be a wife and a mom and whatever else, that's her right to do that. But I don't like the idea that they are told that there's this God, that's what they were created for, was to be a submissive wife and a mother and stuff. And they shouldn't think about having a career or shouldn't join the military and defend their country or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like they
Right.
only have these limited roles they're supposed to fill in society. And like you said, it's literally second class citizens. And God, that makes me so mad to think about.
Sorry to go off on the side a little bit, but have you seen the video that was out recently where a guy was telling his newborn that she was sinful for pooping at the wrong time
Oh, Jesus Christ.
and that she needed to learn how to wash a truck because she needed to know what to expect for her future husband? She's a newborn. I can send it to you if you want.
No, these people, I can't watch something like that. I'll throw my fucking shit across the room. And I don't even consider myself to be a person who doesn't have control over their temper, but I'm only a human being, you know, and there's something, I just cannot subject myself to something like that. God, that
It
just
is wild.
that's vile is what it is. Telling a child, this is child abuse. You know, I've noted situations like this because of having done time with people. There's a lot of people in the joint who have had really rough childhoods because, you know, when people go through a lot of trauma as a child, they don't grow up with an understanding of ethics and how to make good decisions because the adults in their lives weren't making good decisions. A lot of them were exposed to really violent behavior, drugs, things like this, sexual abuse, a lot of terrible stuff.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah. So, right. And so, I've heard some wild stories about stuff that's happened to kids. I also worked in the adult industry, and most of the people who are working in that industry have really, really dark stories to share. And that's why while I'm not an antinatalist, I see LA Life Abolitionist stop by. I don't know if he's still in the chat, but I had a great conversation with him. He and I don't agree on the position of antinatalism. He's an antinatalist. I'm not. I don't think it's fundamentally unethical to have children. But I do think because one, I am an environmentalist and I think the planet can only sustain so many people. We need to be more mindful of overpopulation, just as part of taking care of the planet. But I'm also a really big advocate for people should only have the children that they can provide for. I really do believe that very firmly. And raising children is a responsibility. And so the parents that are raising children to teach themselves they can't poop in a diaper, you know, a 6-month-old or 1-year-old, whatever. I don't have kids. I don't know at what point it's normal to stop that behavior. But no matter what age they are, you can't be, that's just abusive to a child. You start criticizing a child in a certain way. And, you know, RP, I know you've got a very small child, so you probably can relate to a lot of this stuff. You know, children are going to do all kinds of crazy shit probably, right? They don't know any better. And so you have to be tolerant and you have to use positive reinforcement with your children at all times as much as possible. But anyway, I don't know. Like chill. I'm very sensitive when it comes to children. In fact, we're going to be having a show on Wednesday. There's a young lady who was in the chat earlier. She's going to come speak on my channel on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about the ECHO Act. It's enforcement against coercion of children and harm online. And it's really important because we need to start protecting children from online predators. And there's a really big act going in front of Congress here in a couple of weeks. So I want to try and raise awareness for that because I do care a lot about children, even though I don't have my own children. I think everybody should try to protect children because the truth of the matter is that the children literally represent the future of the world. And that's our collective future. So even though I don't have children, I feel a certain responsibility to provide a good life for the children that are out there. But at any rate, RP, it's your chance, family. I'm so glad to have you stop by. I think this might be your first time on my channel, but it's so nice to have you here as always.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me up today. So hi everybody, I'm RP. I host Async with Gretchen. We're streaming pretty much every night currently, and we go all night long. You know, we just like to hang out and you know, talk about different topics that you know, affect the atheist community, involving politics, science, philosophy, and of course religious discussion. Oh man, where to start? For just a quick clarification, do you what sort of restrictions do you have for like topics on your channel?
What type of topics do we What was that now?
What sort of restrictions do you have? Like if
Oh, no,
I'm
no, it's
like
speak freely here.
okay.
I don't have to worry about any of the language you're gonna use. I know you, and I have a great deal of respect for you. So you're free to talk about anything. It's all adults here, and if anybody makes anybody uncomfortable, then they're welcome to leave. But I think we need to expose bad ideas and bad actors.
Okay, great. Just wanted to respect your platform. So, trigger warning for people listening. My story will involve self harm, substance abuse, and assault. Um, okay. I was raised religious my entire life. Specifically in the Church of Christ. They're a very fundamental, very conservative congregation. So conservative that they believe that if you use any sort of instrumentation during worship, that is a sin, and your congregation is going to hell. Um, so I have like a very early memory of waiting for a pre school year checkup at a doctor's office, and I was playing with another kid, and we were playing one of the games that they had there in the doctor office waiting room. And when I won a round, I celebrated by saying, "I'm going to heaven, you're going to hell," and like my the reaction from my mom was, just mortification. But like I didn't know, what what I was saying was wrong, because it was the kind of indoctrination that like I had been seeped in up to that age. I believe I was around second grade at that time. But there were a lot of expectations for me growing up, and when I did not meet those expectations, I was hit. Um, and I I was hit often because I'm also autistic and I have ADHD, and so sitting still and behaving for long amounts of time was a little difficult for me as a child. At one point, when I was in school, they wanted to evaluate me to put me in what was called a behavior disorder, but it was just a another name for special ed. But after the evaluation, they actually determined that I was gifted and not special ed, and so then I was put into accelerated classes. And when I was actually being like intellectually challenged, I wasn't like a disruption in class anymore, and so that was basically the solution. But because of this accelerated program, my parents continued to have higher expectations of me. When I would not get A's at the end of the quarter, um, I would be punished for anything less than perfect. And so this this harbored a lot of anxiety growing up, that also coincided with the anxiety of living as a good Christian. Um, I was the first kid in my age group at my church congregation to get baptized, and I believe it was around 8 years old that I got baptized, and most of my other peers didn't end up getting baptized until they were like almost teenagers. But I fully believed with all my heart that I was a rotten sinner as a child, and that I needed God and Jesus to make me a good person. And I was the typical goody two shoes, like literal Boy Scout. I would do my best to behave in class. Later on in school, like fifth grade and on, I really became like the teacher's pet, always wanting to like impress my mentors and all that. I was the kind of kid that would go to parties in high school and like offer to like be the designated driver, offer to go drive through like McDonald's and get all the drunk people their food and all that stuff. I didn't experiment with drugs or alcohol. I just did my best to walk the straight and narrow, as they say. But in high school, I really started to develop athletically, and I eventually became a varsity cross country runner, and that also translated into making varsity for the track team. I was in really good shape. We went to state both years. I was on the cross country team, and my senior year, as I was preparing for the track season, preseason, I noticed that I was kind of starting to slow down, and I wasn't really performing to the point that I thought I was capable of. So I asked my mom to schedule me a doctor's appointment, and we go to the doctor's. I tell him my symptoms, and the doctor says, "Oh, it sounds like you have mono." And I was like, "Oh, aren't you only supposed to get mono once? Because I had mono last year." And it was at this point that, like, I could tell, like, he was a little concerned, and so he ordered a blood test. And when this blood test came back, he immediately pulled my mom out of the room. And when my mom came back in the room, her face was like white, like she had just seen a ghost. And she's like, we need to go to the college town, an hour and a half away, and you need to be seen at the hospital there. And so she called my dad, and he immediately left work, and he drove like about 100 miles an hour to get me to the university clinic before closing to have me evaluated. When I got there, they admitted me inpatient and informed me that they would be doing a bone marrow aspiration the next morning. At this point, I'm still completely in the dark. I don't know what's going on. As as far as I knew just a couple hours ago, like I was just like, not doing as well in my my running. Just a straight A, high school varsity, band geek, Eagle Scout. Just trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Well, the next morning comes, and they do the bone marrow aspiration, and what they do is they drill into your hip in order to get like really down to like where your bone marrow is produced, primarily in your body. And I had to go under like it's not general anesthesia, but like basically it's like a really strong anti-anxiety medication that they gave me. Just made me really loopy. They did that, and as I'm kind of coming to in my inpatient room, doctor comes in and informs my family that I had leukemia. And this was just such a crazy, like, I had no idea how this could have happened. I tried to be the best Christian I could. I tried to be the best student, the most well behaved, good child of God. And here I am being handed cancer at 17. So this really started just a huge test in my transition into adulthood. During my cancer treatment, I ended up enduring a complication due to the high dose steroid that was part of the chemotherapy regimen, and I developed what's known as avascular necrosis. This is essentially when blood flow stops to a certain part of your body specifically the bones in my knees, which caused like a very, very painful, necrotizing of the bone. And the doctor's solution for this was to just give me the maximum amount of Oxycontin that they were allowed to prescribe me, because I wasn't a candidate for any sort of surgery because I was still in the middle of my chemotherapy, and I still had about 2.5 years left of my chemotherapy program before I'd be a candidate for surgery. So I'm sure a lot of you can kind of guess where that ended up going. I developed a dependency, and due to all these stresses, like I ended up not doing very well in my freshman and sophomore years of university. And it was very frustrating because my entire life I had worked so hard to be a good student. And for some reason I thought I could still manage doing all that when when I was literally fighting for my life. And so I didn't give myself the patience or like self-understanding to like say like, hey, your circumstance is different from any other student. Like you don't need to be pushing yourself this hard. But I did. And my going into my junior year, I continued to not excel academically. And in fact, I was on the verge of failing a majority of my classes the fall semester of my junior year. And at the end of the semester, I was just so lost and distraught that I attempted to take my own life. And it was at this point that like I thought that like God was giving me a test, and that like I wasn't strong enough to pass God's test. And so this was kind of my way of saying like, sorry God, I can't do it. Luckily my roommate at the time was able to get me to the emergency room, and preventative measures were taken, and I didn't suffer any sort of organ damage or anything. But I was put into counseling, and what I had decided for myself was that I still wasn't being a good enough Christian. And so instead of returning to the state university I had just attended for the last 5 semesters, I wanted to attend Christian university in Nashville so that I could get closer to God and, become a better Christian again. So I started Narcotics Anonymous to deal with my dependency issues, and I moved down to Nashville, and I started taking Bible classes, took New Testament, Greek, and at the time they were piloting. They were applying for ABET certification for their civil engineering program, but this is the kind of school that was teaching like in their geology class that like before Noah's flood there was a water canopy that surrounded the earth, and that's where all the water from Noah's flood came. Was God simply released the water from the water canopy. And they also were teaching crazy things like the water canopy blocked out the sun's ultraviolet radiation. That's why humans before the flood were able to live like up to like 900 years. Like really really wacky creationist young earth stuff. But it was when I was attending this university, in one of my Bible classes, we had to do an essay on faith. And for some reason, like my the topic I ended up coming up with for this essay was making your faith your own. And I had realized that like my faith was not my own. It was the faith that my parents had been putting onto me my entire life. And this, ironically enough, was kind of like the catalyst for like beginning my deconstruction. I started to lose my faith when I was attending a Christian university. And so I started to become more critical of the text as I was, reading and learning about, the Greek translations in my classes. And I started to see more and more, you know, gaps in the armor, so to speak. And so I only lasted about 3 semesters at this private university before I was like, I can't continue here because I just no longer believe in this religion. And so I moved back to my home state, and I ended up getting an apartment with one of my high school friends. And I tried to go back to the state university, but losing my faith was still a struggle, and I ended up kind of developing a drinking issue at the time. And it felt very normal because my friend was also drinking quite a bit too. um and like during this time of deconstruction, I still believed in like an intelligent designer. Like I was probably like a deist at this point. Like I believe that there was probably still some sort of like personal foundation out there that is responsible for everything. But I started getting into like woo territory. I became obsessed with like sacred geometry. um I got really into like Eastern philosophy. I read into Taoism, Buddhism. I got really into meditation. And one day, my friend, came back from one of his buddy's place, and he's like, "Hey, man, I got this really fun drug. Have you ever heard of MDMA?" And I was like, Isn't that stuff that like people like use at raves?" And he's like, "Yeah." It's like it's the funnest thing I've ever done. You should try it. Well, I'm a very careful methodical person, so I took like a week to like research the compound, and like kind of came up with the safest way I could experiment with it. And I took it, and literally in one night, um it changed my life. I stopped drinking pretty much right away. The next day, um my oh, I forgot to mention, like I was also seeking therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder due to the medical trauma um I went through. And so the that single dose of MDMA did more for my PTSD than years of therapy did. And I started feeling like a human again. It gave me the courage to like go out and start meeting new people. And within a week, I met my now partner. We've been married for over 10 years now. OE mentioned that we have a young child. He's our first, still under a year old. But I was still deconstructing from the idea of like a full God concept. I wasn't quite all the way into atheism. And so like it still took years of like after moving to Colorado and like still like reading into like Eastern religions and philosophy. that like I started to get more into logic and like uh, philosophers like Immanuel Kant, um, and I started looking more into ethics and it I'm not sure why ethics was like something that kind of helped shake me out of this God belief, but it was. I eventually like became comfortable with dropping the idea of like some sort of creating power behind everything. I didn't need everything to have like a perfect explanation, um, and so it just allowed me to try to approach things in a way that allowed me to find the truth rather than find what was comfortable, because for the longest time I was still looking for that comfort, because like it is comfortable to think that there is some sort of mind behind everything, pulling the strings of fate. um it kind of allows you to not take full accountability for your situation or your actions. Uh, but yeah, after I finally became comfortable dropping those notions, I was finally comfortable calling myself an atheist. But after that, it, I didn't really seek out like the atheist community right away. I was just kind of alone being an atheist and just trying to figure out like how that fit into my life. Um, and so, I took different jobs working here in Denver. I worked, for Panda Express for several years. Was front of house, back of house, person in charge. Ended up working at a call center, and yeah, eventually, just around the time of the pandemic, I started getting into TikTok debates, and I found Parker Get a Job. He was doing a lot of like political debates, and that really started to interest me. And so, kind of from that, I started getting suggested atheist debate channels, such as like The Line, AXP, Guts at Gibbon, Forrest Valkai, Matt Dillahunty, all those kind of people. And so, for the next couple of years over the pandemic, I started building a library of you know like-minded thinkers that like I respected, and I really just was intrigued with this style of debate of trying to really get down to the truth, and also kind of be a counter to the falsities that like religious people are trying to push on others. And that's kind of where I find myself where I am today. Is my interest in those communities led me to meet so many wonderful people in the chats. um I think I first spoke to Gretchen in either Joel reads Bibles chat or Mezzo's chat, and we've kind of had casual conversations here and there. But then one of our mutual friends, um, told me about this idea for this network that Gretchen was starting, and he thought that I'd be a good fit to join her. And he apparently he was right, because I feel like we've been having like a lot of fun over the last like 6 weeks since I joined. I feel very at home at Async, and I'm just infinitely grateful for the friendship, the community that like I've been able to find in the atheist community, because that's something that like I lacked for the longest time. I just felt so alone, and that loneliness, led me to dark places. It led me to try to hurt myself. It led me into substance abuse, and it's just so important to have that sort of social safety net. People that care for you, like people that like will notice, like if you're gone for a while. Um, so yeah, like I'm in a much better place, today than I was years ago, and I just hope that I keep improving and help also improve, other people's lives around me. Um, and that's I guess kind of my story. I hope it wasn't too rambly.
My goodness, no, not at all. Not at all. A lot comes to mind. Let me see if I can hit the right button this time. There we go. No, a lot comes to mind. First of all, my heart goes out to you. That's it's honestly, it's hard to listen to a story like that because of the empathy that I hope we all have here in this community. And because of our empathy, which is part of our human nature, right? We've evolved to have this because we're a social species.
Mhm.
One of my favorite science communicators, if I haven't given him a shout out here, is Austin Sims, and he's Scientific Origins. I think Robin put a link to his channel in the chat earlier. I saw. I usually try to put a link to his channel in the description of every video that I make because he and Dr. Greg are two of my favorite science communicators. And when it comes to evolution, he would really be the person to talk to about this. But I'm learning so much about it thanks to people like Austin who are willing to take time out of their day and share this information. Guts at Gibbons, another great resource on that. But at any rate, we've evolved to be a social animal, right? And so our empathy is a huge part of our survival. It's really important, and we need to embrace that. This is where we get our understanding of objective morality from. So it looks like somebody may have dropped Jack. Looks like somebody might have dropped. I don't know if they had to go or if their communication dropped off. But at any rate, so my heart's breaking for you, but I will say though, a couple things just really quickly. For one thing, I think you and Gretchen make an amazing team. The way you guys kind of feed off of each other, it's so organic, and you both fill kind of a unique niche, so to speak. And so like you're getting into the philosophy side of things. Gretchen hates Phil Bros. I think that's so funny.
Yeah. No, but for sure, I feel like we definitely complement each other, and like even like some of our opponents that have come on the panel have like made similar observations, and so I'm just thankful for the kind of chemistry that we have, and like it just feels very natural being on a panel with you, Gretchen.
You too, RP. And like he says, everybody can drop by and watch us fight like mommy and daddy every night.
That's hilarious. I've never seen you two go at it, and I stop in as much as I can. I mean, I think I just found out about your channel like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I usually stop in almost every night, at least to give it a thumbs up to help you guys with the algorithm and say hello to everybody really quickly. Sometimes I can chat. You've both been very gracious to let me come up on the panel and share some of my ideas or things that I'm really passionate about. Like, oh, good, Jack's back. Okay. So like talking about Echo, which we're going to be talking about this week, what I wanted to promote the Arc Encounter protest. You were both very gracious to let me do that on your channel. It's tough. Everybody's kind of competing for the same audience, and the atheist space is so small compared to the theist space. And so I just have a lot of respect for you both for allowing me to do that, because I think that we're all in agreement that Arc Encounter needs to be done away with, or at least restructured, like financially, so that it's not a burden to taxpayers, at the very least. But so I just have a lot of appreciation for what you guys are doing with your channel.
Sorry, I lost power. I'm back now, though.
I was glad it was for a good reason. Like I was hoping it was for something like that. We didn't just like freak you out. Jack's like, I'm out of here. I can't. This is getting too heavy.
Jack, I just gotta say, I love the shirt. Gorillas are one of my favorite bands.
Pretty dope. Have you heard of their Andromeda album?
No, I didn't listen to much after Stylo.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Okay. I'm a big Plastic Beach fan, but
I never really got that into Gorillas, but I was a Blur junkie in the 90s.
Yep.
check out a beautiful dog on screen a little earlier too for anybody who missed that. I don't know if you want to bring your dog back for a little show and tell.
Katya.
Jack. Always welcome
Hey.
to do that.
Come here. Up. Come on.
Oh, look
Come
at this.
Here we go.
Look at this. Oh,
Kisses.
yeah, you can give him a kiss for me too, Jack. It's okay.
This is Katya. She's a German Shepherd Pit Bull mix.
Oh, that's an
And
interesting mix.
yeah, you could tell by her back. She's got the black German Shepherd back and the brindle color everywhere else. So
And how old is the dog?
she's 5.
Oh, she's just a baby still.
She ain't growing too much bigger than this, but
No, but they get, I mean, it's amazing. The dogs, the personality, they are so smart. Dogs in general, just so smart. I guess technically people say that some breeds are smarter than other breeds. I don't know. My wife and I just did Chihuahuas. I did have one adopted dog that was, I don't know, like maybe part coyote, part German Shepherd or something. It was a big dog, all black. I called him Midnight. Beautiful dog. But the Chihuahuas are most of what we had experience with, and they are smart dogs, really smart.
well, she is pretty, but she is not smart. She did not get the German Shepherd gene. She's run into many walls.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. Well, Arpy, it's interesting to me that you made a comment that kind of struck me as strange, that you said, and this is not a criticism, just to clarify here. It just struck me as something I wasn't expecting to hear, but you said that when you started studying the philosophy of ethics, that's what got you out of the religion. And if I remember right, you said that it kind of surprised you that was what it took, as opposed to like maybe looking into science or something, maybe, I guess is what you were inferring there.
Yeah, because up to that point, like, you know, I was an engineer, and so I was already, you know, well versed in the sciences, and it's funny that familiarity isn't what shook me out of it. It took, like, you know, an examination of philosophy.
Okay, that makes more sense to me, because as somebody who's done a really deep dive into not just philosophy, but the philosophy of ethics over this last year, I've just been so passionate about it. In fact, I've gotten so deep into it that I've been engaging in formal debates on the topic of morality, objective versus subjective, and most of my debates have actually been about secular morality versus biblical morality. As you know, I think we did a review of my debate with Jill, if we can even call that a debate.
Yep.
Yeah, what a hot mess that was. At any rate, but according to Jill, he destroyed me in that. So I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but at any rate, I do formal debates on the topic, and I would think that anybody who has any sense of what ethics or morality actually is, that would be the first thing that would get them out of the religion.
Yeah, it was definitely a huge catalyst. For some reason, I had not really I guess dwelled too much on the atrocities of, you know, the Hebrew Bible, of just the barbarism, and how they treated women, how they slaughtered children, you know, in the name of Yahweh. But after, you know, becoming more interested in ethics, you know, it was super easy to look at that and, like, you know, really apply that critical lens and just tear the Bible to shreds.
It's so wild to me, because when you study the Bible, it isn't just even one isolated instance where women and children in particular, are being harmed. I mean, I don't even think Christians even realize what the Passover is actually celebrating, and the history of what the event actually is, right?
It's
the
passing over of their firstborns not being slaughtered.
Yeah, but other firstborns were.
Yep.
That's the crazy thing about that story, is that the angel of the Lord is literally going through the Egyptian, you know, camp, I think they call it at that point, slaughtering children, and they're just celebrating this as a holiday. It's like, I don't even care, you know, like what obviously you're going to be grateful, you know, that the children that you want to live lived, but how could any decent human being celebrate an event like that, even being on the side of the victor, so to speak. You know what I mean? That just to me is just so detached from any sense of humanity, and they just have no emotional attachment to it. They're Passover, it's the Passover faith. They'll argue about the contradiction between the gospel accounts of when was Jesus crucified. It's all based on the Passover event, and nobody ever mentions what the Passover actually refers to because they don't care. It's like literally they could just don't even think about it. The whole idea of justice, which is one of the virtues, it's a really important virtue because it requires fairness, and that's really important for us to understand as treating like cases alike, and that's where we can get our basic sense of humanity and equality from. And the idea that this God is one judging the world for this sin that supposedly just popped up out of nowhere. God's like, oh, I have no idea where that came from, you know. And then he's drowning everybody with the flood narrative shortly after. I mean, the whole thing, it just makes no sense when it comes to like the ethical position. And Christians, Jews, Muslims, all the Abrahamic religions that are tied to this origin story have no qualms about it. Most of them seem to. They just could ignore it. In fact, I think Robin was telling me when she talked to her mother, I hope it's okay if I say the story, Robin. You're in chat. You can tell me to shut up if you want me to, but I've heard her mention it several times online, so I'm sure she'll be okay with me sharing it. But she said that when she was deconstructing, she was asking her mother about some of these passages in the Bible, and her mother's like, I can't remember word for word what Robin told me. I think it's something like, oh, I don't read those passages, or I don't know. I don't have any answers for those passages. So I think she just kind of like picks out the good stuff, the happy stuff that she likes. And I think maybe a lot of the people who are tied to this religion actually do that. You know, they just ignore, they don't want to deal with it. So they just pretend it's not there.
Yeah, it's just cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's really scary. When person, I know having been adopted several times, I've had a lot of step parents before I was even a teenager. And I've had step parents who were who mentally not well, which is why I ended up back in the adoption system. And I've had adults tell me that whenever they come to an uncomfortable thought, they visually pack it into a box and tuck it into their mental closet. And I'm just like, what does that even mean? As a child, I had no idea how to even process something like that. But looking back at it as an adult, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's just a different way of articulating that they just ignore it. They just bury it somewhere where they'll never go inside their own head, which I don't know how a person can function in life having these places in your own mind that you actively ignore. That's just, I don't know. That's so crazy.
Because they have a community of people that are also doing the same thing to help them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no matter how deep you pack that, it always ends up manifesting as some sort of neurosis, like later in life.
Yeah.
You can't outrun your problems.
They call it psychosomatic,
four
right? I think that's what psychosomatic syndromes are, or psychosomatic phenomenon. Psychosomatic, is it syndrome or phenomenon? Either way, it's an effect where something that's basically a psychological issue then manifests itself into your life.
Could be.
Yeah, that's why therapy is super important.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And the right medications and having a support system around you. And that's why one of the things I would really like to do today, in particular, but also what I try to do with this channel, is to hopefully set an example. And it's not to say that I'm a perfect person or I've got it all figured out, because that's not the case. In fact, there's many times I've had to be humble, admit that I've made a mistake, and I appreciate people helping me to see my mistakes so that I can make better choices in the future. But the example to set is that we need to recognize the problems that other people are having, and that includes our Christian friends, our Muslim friends, right? Our Hindu friends and family members, and be empathetic to what they're going through and recognize the fact that they are locked into something that they apparently seem to think that they need. And, you know, somebody asked me one time, I don't know, Tristan Gabriel, he does a lot, with some of the other bigger channels. And he's a young man who went through seminary and then deconstructed into, I think he considers himself an agnostic theist. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's where he's at now. But he interviewed me. I think it was my first time being interviewed on somebody else's channel. maybe a year ago or so. We had a great conversation, and he asked me in that conversation, he said, if you could just snap your fingers and make religion go away overnight, would you do it? And I actually said, no, I would not do that. And the reason I would not do that is because I feel like it would create a vacuum, a huge vacuum, right? Like, what are we going to fill that with? That's my concern. And I do see people go to very extreme lengths when they leave religion. Not all people do, but I have witnessed it myself where people realize that, oh my God, I've been completely believing and absorbed in something that's just demonstrably false. There's no God, or the earth isn't 6,000 years old, or the earth isn't flat. I mean, the crazy shit that religious people believe, oh, there's actually nothing wrong with gay marriage, right? A woman should have a right to choose what to do with her body, whatever it might be. And they go so far the other direction, and they get into all kinds of, just doing everything they can to get away from what they were raised in. And they latch onto things that themselves are not healthy alternatives, unhealthy lifestyles, unhealthy beliefs, in my opinion, so on and so forth. And so I think that we need to replace this need that people have, this fear of nihilism, this fear of death, so on and so forth, this fear of being different and accepting people who are different than you are. We need to replace that with something. And what my hope is that we could replace it, first and foremost, with science. That's the most important thing. I think the strongest foundation that we can give to anybody is something that's empirical. The other thing is from philosophy, the philosophy of ethics, to help them understand what objective morality actually is, what equality actually means, right? What justice, things like these words that we throw around all the time, what do they actually mean? And what does it take to embrace this and have this be a part of my life? That's what we need to replace this with. And it's not something you could just do overnight, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that power vacuum thing, especially with big institutions like the Catholic Church. I mean, what are they going to do with the $1 billion slush fund after religion, right?
Oh, the corruption is something that's a whole nother. One of these days, I'm going to do a show or a series of shows on that. We were talking about my experience in the adult industry a little bit in the chat. And I'm going to, at some point, do a show about that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about that topic, the dirty P word. And, fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with consenting adults that want to have their kink or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with voyeurism, right? It could be a huge turn on to have sex in front of a camera for those of you who haven't tried it, But the problem is there is so much corruption in the industry, in the adult industry itself. They target vulnerable people, women and children. I was talking to Andy, who came and talked to my channel last night. I've seen him on Async's channel a lot. He's such a nice young man. I really, really love that kid. And he and I were talking to A's Philosophy, who's a conservative Christian, about a week or so ago, about politics. And we were talking about, what is the right political system? Is it socialism? Is it capitalism? Blah, blah, blah. And the issue that I brought up is that irregardless of what system you think is the best system, corruption is the biggest problem with politics. That's really where I'm at with that, and I don't even know a lot about politics, and that seems obvious to me. So no matter what institution we're talking about, whether it's religion, politics, or whatever it is, the corruption factor is something that needs to be addressed, because that's really the most important thing. That's the thing that'll bring it all crashing down, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I have my own thoughts. I hear a lot of people talk about socialism, communism, capitalism. Mostly people who bring it up just in random conversations are the extremely conservative Christians who say that atheism is socialism. I've heard that multiple times this week, which is kind of strange to me. It's like you don't even know what either of those words mean. So why are you using them? But yeah, I think personally, like, I'm on the side of capitalism, but mixed market based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So like there should be some things that you do not, but you do not like have markets for, and then other things you do have markets for. So
I was just going through. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to distract, but Austin, I just saw this comment. He says, "Holy crap! This just went from legendary god tier content to oh, what a cute baby doggo." The dog stole the show, my friend. That's what happens around here, Austin. Come on now, you know. So I
I'm
think
sorry.
no, not at all. What I'd like to do is I'd like to share just one story that somebody sent to me on Discord. They wanted to be shared. We're going to keep the names out of it. I don't think they care about their Discord name, but there's no personal names we're going to bring into this. But can I share my screen here? I want to make sure I'm not going to dox anybody by bringing this up. Let me just give a quick look to what I'm sharing here. So it looks like everything that is visible is just Discord names, which the people you're already here on the panel. So I'm assuming you don't care about that. Yeah, it looks like. Okay. Here it is. Let me make sure I get the right one. Okay, so I think that should be safe to share. I want to be respectful of everyone's privacy here. Let me bring up the right screen. You guys have to bear with me. You know, I'm really bad when it comes to this technology, and I don't have an ARPy tech wizard on my team here to help me out figure this shit out.
I also work in IT if you ever need.
Oh, I'm a hot mess, family. Like the only reason that my channel has cool stuff like videos and graphics and all that stuff is because people donated it to me. Like GeoSam, I don't know if you're in the chat, but I really appreciate you. Deconverted Man sent a song to me. Nazreen sent that great song for the protest. So that's the only reason this channel looks even remotely professional is because other people realized what bad shape I'm in, and they're like, "Listen, this guy needs some help." All right, so I want to just share this story with you. This is a personal story about a deconstruction from a friend of mine on Discord. My full story, I was raised in a Christian cult, and I don't mean I was raised in the cult of Christianity. I was raised in a specific sect of Christianity that met all the requirements in their entirety to be a cult. We were called Book of Acts Christians. Our quote-unquote father, which is what we called him, my actual dad, was and still is the leader of the cult. From an early age, I was taught to hate everyone, including other Christians, because they were all liars, hypocrites, and God hated them. Only our church had the true message passed down from my great-grandfather. This church has 5 locations, all led by a member of my family, sister, father, brother, cousin, uncle, and all 5 locations believe my dad to be a chosen prophet of the Lord. His words are God's words. The prophet's status is bound to my family's bloodline. So essentially, when dad dies, God will begin speaking to one of his immediate male children. That is myself, my younger brother, and my older brother, which it will be our younger brother since older brother since and I have left the cult. The first time I was sent out to protest was when I was 3 years old. I don't have memory of it, but there is a picture of 3-year-old me holding a sign that says, "All F slurs will burn." Leviticus 18:24. So that is the first time I was sent out to protest. The first memory I have of protesting was at a soldier's funeral when I was 13 years old. I still remember the sounds of people screaming at us and begging us to stop. Back then, I called them dirty sinners. Today, I hate myself for it. In my teen years, I protested at gay bars, nightclubs, funerals, anything that didn't line up with my cult. I hurt many, many people and destroyed many hearts. I started to realize I was gay around 13, though. I felt it was just another test. I kept this between me and God until I turned 17. The month after I turned 17, my older brother packed his bags and left. He was done and had enough of the lies. It was then that I told I'd be taking over the church. It was then that I was told I'd be taking over the church when Dad retired. So at this point, I felt obligated to tell my father. My dad also assumed it was a test. And after a long discussion, we decided to try conversion therapy. Now, this was Missouri, so Connecticut, it's legal and was way more practical at the time, but still not often. We did find one, though. It has since been shut down for child abuse. While there, I was subjected to many tortures. My eyes were forced open, and I was forced to watch pornography. They would test me with images of men, and if I were aroused, they could burn me or prick me with a needle. I won't go into too much more detail than that, but there was a lot more. All while this was going on, I had been having conversations with my now atheist brother, and he was desperately trying to get me to see reason. And I treated him like shit. But he never wavered, never shouted back, never matched my energy, nothing. He was always so kind. I'm actually crying typing this. LOL. So I'm going through Connecticut now. I am shadow pastoring my dad and preaching to preparing to take over. And now I'm trying to convince my atheist brother that who is being lied to by scientists and the devil. This went on for a year, and I became desperate to save my brother's soul. So I decided that I was going to take courses on evolution. I could learn more about it than he knew and prove to him it was a lie and fake. After all, I was strong in my faith. I could make it past the brainwashing of science. So I began taking biology courses at my local community college. Just basic biology, nothing special. But I remember taking my textbook home and reading the entire thing. I started out wanting to learn so I could disprove it to my brother. But as I was reading, I was looking at things that I couldn't explain. DNA structures began making sense without a God, and I began deconstructing. And I just want to tell you that I said, I'm so sorry. This story is so heartbreaking. I'm really hurting for you. No person should have been treated that way you were treated, especially as a child. The first thing I need to ask you is, how are you doing today? Do you have a group of people close to you that actually supports you now? And they responded, oh, absolutely. I have a loving partner, great group of friends, and my older brother and his family. All is very okay in our lives now. We've healed tremendously. So I'm going to stop with that. Let me pull this, figure out which buttons I'm hitting here. I want to thank you all for giving me a chance to share that story and for your attention there to that, and also for your respect for that person's situation, what they went through. This is not a one-off thing. We've heard 4 personal testimonies today from the panel members, and I just read a 5th from another person who sent that to me. I want to thank Isa Secular, one of the members of our community on the atheist community, another wonderful human being that I've met through the Async network. That's a great resource. I'm going to say it 100 times by the time the stream is over. Please do check out the Async network. Check out Robin Webster's channel. There are some really good resources out there to find a community of people that are supportive. And Isa Secular, when I mentioned that I was going to wanting to do a stream about RTS, which is religious trauma syndrome, it's the abuse that people can go through when they're deconstructing. It's some of the experiences that people have when they're deconstructing that can be harmful, that can cause obstacles that prevent people from wanting to try to deconstruct. And Isa Secular set me up with a number of people, which I'm really grateful that they took the time to do that. So thank you so much, Isa. Jack and Miles, it was such an honor to meet both of you today. And Gretchen and Arpia, I've been so glad that I've had a chance to not just meet you, but get to know you over these last several weeks, whatever it's been. And you just inspire me a lot, each and every one of you, because people ask me, because I'm always talking about living a good life and what it takes to live a good life and making the world a better place. And they're like, Daniel, do you really think that we can fix this shit show of a world that we're in right now, that the world can be a better place? And the truth is, I always say it, yes, I actually do think we can make a difference. One person cannot do it. But if we start working together, right, we actually can make the difference. And the solution can only come from within. Nobody else is going to fix this for us, right? The dogs, as wonderful as they are, they're not going to be able to do it, right? The apes and the monkeys, they can't do it. The cheetahs, the lion, nobody can do this. The beautiful plants, we're the only living organism that can fix this mess. And the big reason is we're the ones that created this mess. There are no gods did this to us. We did this to ourselves. And if we did this to ourselves, we've got to take the bull by the horns, as they say, right, and turn this thing around. So if everyone on the panel is comfortable, I'd like to open up the panel if any of the people watching want to join the conversation, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, I'm down.
Sounds good. Yeah.
It's fine with me.
Okay. Just for everyone, before I post this link, normally we're pretty tolerant around here when it comes to people getting out of pocket, but I'm going to be keeping that on a very short leash this time. Okay. If people are going to come up onto this panel, you're not going to come up here and attack people personally. You're not going to disrespect people. You're not going to intentionally misgender people. Okay. We're not going to have any of that. No bigotry, none of that bullshit today. I just like I said, normally I do respect free speech and I try to give a little bit of a leeway so that we can try to get these bad ideas exposed and educate people on how to correct this thinking. But today's not the day for it. Okay. So just please, that's fair warning. Okay. But that's the only warning people are going to get today. All right. Let me go ahead and post this link. Open up the floor for anybody to speak freely while I'm doing this, please.
Just want to shout out, all the amazing creators in the community. Like the big ones like Justin, Deconstruction Zone, Mezzo and Joel of Bad Bible Hub. All the collaborators at the line, Matt Dillahunty, Paula Gia, Jimmy Snow, Promise Bachland, Alyssa Lube, Arden Hart, John Godless Engineer, Dr. Aaron Adair, Skeptics and
Read 'em all.
Scoundrels. Yeah, like they're all just so great, and each of them brings a different, unique perspective to
How
the
dare
table.
you not mention Blitz and Ian? Like, you should be shot at this point.
I was getting
Fuck.
there. I'd only gotten through like a quarter of the people at the line, but yeah, obviously, Dr. Blitz, PhD, and allegedly Ian, and some smaller ones like Monkey Boy Logic. He's great if you're a fan of Ian, John Cohen, Dalton the Bible Guy. Just like this community is I feel like is growing so rapidly, and like I really feel like we have the chance to like kind of boom and really like cement ourselves and kind of the
You
cultural
forgot this guy called
zeitgeist.
Objective Ethics. He's pretty cool too.
Yes.
Thanks for saying all those nice things, Daniel. Back at you, buddy.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been wonderful getting to know you over the past couple of weeks, and I always appreciate when you come on our panel.
I'm very humbled by that. It's humbling to be mentioned in that list of names. Thank you so much. I am just trying to literally make a positive difference, and it's not something I'm not some kind of a like a great leader like a Gandhi or something like that, where I'm going to convince the world, or a Dr. Martin Luther King, where I'm going to inspire the world to make better choices by myself. But what I am trying to do is grow a platform that's a community effort, where we can basically say we might have different political ideas. We might even have different ideas about religion. We might have different ideas about social issues. But what we need to do is have a common idea that we're all human beings. We all need to have food on our plate, a roof over our head, enough money to survive. Because of these same basic needs that we share, we can use this as a building block to say we're all equal, and we all have an equal reason to have our freedom and well-being, right? Because we all have this same reason, we ought to have it, and we ought not interfere with each other's freedom and well-being. And that's really what this is about. I don't even consider it to be my own channel. To be honest with you, I consider it to be a community, and I'm really shocked at how quickly it's growing. But I thank you for that. And I noticed that Phil Sober popped in. Phil Sober does a great job with their channel as well. It's an honor to have you here, Phil. Anybody's welcome to join the chat if you'd like to. I've got the link pinned in the YouTube comment section.
Oh, look at that. You made Phil's algorithm. Look at that.
Phil is one of those. Yeah, Phil's one of the people who does debates. If for anybody who doesn't know, Phil Sober has a great channel. I highly recommend it. He sets up debates, and his format, the way that he does it, the times I've had a chance to catch your videos, they are so organized. Everybody's so well behaved. I mean, I just don't know how you manage to keep that all, because he's got a number of people on the panel at the same time. But he lets one person or two people, I guess, interact with each other at a time, and everybody else, I guess, is muted or something. I don't know if you have control over the mics or how you do that, but people just wait patiently. They wait their turn, and I've never heard a crash out, So I think however Phil's doing it, it's a really enjoyable show to watch, because I don't get into the bloodbath stuff so much myself. I don't think it's productive. It can be entertaining. I understand that there's an entertainment value to it, but I prefer to just get into the arguments themselves and find out if there's any truth that could be found. And I think Phil is doing a really good job with that format.
RP, I'm not condoning drug use at all, but you said something earlier about doing MDMA, and it helped you out a lot. I have a similar experience with LSD, but I would highly recommend nobody try any illicit drugs. But it really did help me with my depression and PTSD, and yeah, I'm glad
Well,
that it worked out for you.
yeah, they're using a lot more of those chemicals in treatment of depression and stuff now too, and anxiety, like legally. So
Yeah,
I think it's very important to fund research efforts into these, newer pathways of treatment, just because of the potential therapeutic value for individuals. Like for me, anecdotally, it was life changing, but I understand that isn't going to be a global experience, and that's why we need to have more information about these compounds in a proper medical setting.
absolutely.
I just realized that I can organize all these pictures. I didn't even know I could do this before, so I'm trying to remember now who's on the panel here and get everybody set to.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
That is so fun. I didn't know I could do that. That is so cool. I could play with this forever. There's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of goofing around, but I want to welcome everyone to the stage. And normally I give everybody a chance. In fact, I think I will do that in my normal format. So what I'll do is I'll give each of the new people a chance to introduce themselves and then say what they want to say as kind of an opening statement. And then we'll just kind of open up for everybody. So the first person I'd like to introduce is my basically dear friend, my sister, somebody who I have so much respect for and who I really love as a human being. I've actually learned a lot from her, and I consider her to be like my older sister. She's just such a wonderful human being. Robin Webster. And for those of you who don't know, please subscribe to her channel, support her efforts, and tune into what she's doing. She's actually been involved in a few debates as well, and she does a really good job in her debates. And she's also involved in a lot of really diverse communities. So whatever she's doing, she's able to speak to people on both sides of the aisle, and she has a lot of respect from both sides of the community, and that's really hard to do. So I would recommend looking at her as an example of how we can treat other people that we don't necessarily agree with. So Robin, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people about your channel, and then whatever you have to say.
Hey, I think most everybody here knows me. I'm Robin Webster. I do. I don't put out routine content, but I do like sort of anti-theist and political too. I'm as political as I am anti-theist, but yeah. And I love OE. Like OE's like always showers me with wonderful stuff he says about me. But RP, it was so good to hear your story. I mean, like it was so hard, but I love you so much. You're such, and Gretchen, you too.
Well, thank you.
Oh,
We love having you on our panels. You're a great presence to have.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that
Robin's the bomb,
I
yo.
able to meet you. Yeah.
yeah, it was. I mean, like your story was. It was hard. I know it was hard to go through, but it was hard to listen to. Like just thanks. Like how much you've been through is amazing. You come out the other side of it in such a good place, and you had the baby and everything. And I hope everything goes so good for you. And Neil, it's good to see you. And like Phil out there, I was happy about seeing Phil. I love Phil. I've been watching Phil since he was. Well, he was a big channel, but like there wasn't hardly anybody like from YouTube watching him back then. So like I followed Phantom over there. So and so yeah, I just wanted to come on and say hi to everybody. I'm not gonna stay on here long. I'm modding and I'm trying to keep up with 2 channels, so I'm about to go crazy right now. But
Thank you for all your work.
yeah, thank you.
It's a tough job.
Yeah, thank you for
That's
sharing
good.
your stories, man. Like it's
Chump
awesome.
change. 2 channels. I'm just
But,
kidding.
yeah,
I'm just fucking with you,
I know,
Robin.
I know. But
Okay, Gretchen.
but like we've had a little, you know, like and like I timed Wesley out while ago, but he only timed him out for like 5 minutes or something, so he may be back. I don't know, so you might want to keep an eye out for him. But
I'll try my best. Everybody who watches my channel at this point knows probably that I'm really bad about splitting my attention between the chat and the guests that are talking, or what I'm running my mouth about, who knows. So I do appreciate that people kind of have to have a little bit of fortitude when it comes to the chat. They could basically just ignore comments that I haven't seen, but having somebody like Robin out there, Tilting Windmill has been a huge help for the channel as well when they get a chance to stop by. And I do really appreciate your efforts, because there is stuff that has gotten by me that needs to be gotten rid of. And I just didn't notice it until after I was like, oh, the message is deleted. You know, thank goodness Robin's out there, you know, God. So, but I do appreciate that everyone understands that at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own, you know, well-being to a certain degree, right? Like we have to,
and everybody here is familiar with Wesley. It just kind of like screws up chat with all his crap. So like I don't
Wesley
think
gets around. I don't think he's saved the cell yet, but he's trying, man. I give him an A for effort.
I don't think anybody like you know, I don't think anything he says bothers people too much because they've heard it so many times. But because I always ask him, I'm still waiting on my $32,000, and I just don't want to read none of that crap till I get my check. So that's what I tell him all the time. But anyway, thanks for having me up. I'm gonna get back off here though, but I'll be in chat.
All right, sister, you're always welcome here. You know that. Thank you so much for your help in the chat. I really appreciate that you're willing to do that, because it is a thankless job at the end of the day, right? A lot of modding is something that I don't know how you people can do it. Like I can't keep up myself, and I know Robin's doing 2 channels. I think Gretchen, she does modding on one channel while she's hosting on another on her own channel at night. It's insane that she could go back and forth like that. I don't know how y'all could do that.
Yeah,
I've seen
I've
her
been on
on
RP.
Yeah, I've seen her on 3 different streams at one time. So
she's busy over with all her channels she's got. And there's a whole lot more people watching most of those channels than any of the channels I'm on. So, but all right. Well, thank you. Love you, Daniel. And
Love you too, sister. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank all y'all for sharing your stories.
you're welcome.
Yeah, this has been such a great show already. And so let me see who's next on my list. Nell, it's always good to see you, sister. I'm just always so honored and flattered to have you come by. I'm so grateful that I had a chance to meet you. I think that was through Scott's channel. And it's just been really nice to engage with you. You're very intelligent. You've got great ideas, push back on philosophy. We've talked a lot about that in the past. So I'm so grateful to have you come by here and share with my audience as well.
Oh, I'm glad that you could have me, and I love hearing all these different stories. You know, I have a story of my own, but before getting into that, just since you wanted just a quick opening, I'm where I'm currently at. I'm an atheist. I'm a pluralist, as in I want to try to live in harmony with other people with different beliefs, religions, theisms. It's just I'll become an anti-theist real quick if you don't respect religious freedom, or lack of religion. And when it comes to like what is reality fundamentally made of, I'm pretty agnostic on that. So
I think that's a really the best place to be in a lot of positions, to be honest with you, because when you start to dig into philosophy, realism versus anti-realism, identity, what actually is, what is not. There's so many things that you could really break down. Hard solipsism. I mean, there's so much stuff to get into where if you take it seriously, it could make you question, what do we really know, right? There has to be a certain level of uncertainty that we must accept. And it's fascinating. So people get so determined that they've got it all figured out. You automatically know they're wrong.
There's just so much out there: physicalism, idealism, panpsychism. You can go down a lot of rabbit holes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the tough thing is, I've made this comment before. The labels get really sticky because as soon as you adopt a label, you kind of paint yourself into a corner, and life is so much more nuanced than that. I don't know. Not everybody agrees with me on that. I have a gay friend of mine, and he says that labels in the gay community are actually very important because it affects the partnerships, right? And tops and bottoms and things of that nature. And so he says that he really likes the labels. And so it's not the same for everybody, and sometimes labels make people feel comfortable because they have an identity that they can latch onto, and they can identify who's on the in group, who's on the out group. So there are used, purposes for these labels.
Yes.
It can give us go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm pretty pragmatic about it, because I identify as a trans woman, and that's, to me, it's a useful label to have. It's just, I'm not going to get too stuck up on the labels. I'm more interested in just living my life, and if just stop trying to make my identity a political.
Then it got kind of boring after a while, and I started seeing that just like everybody else, just kind of curious about philosophy and epistemology and how do I know the things I claim to know or believe, and went down that whole exploration, and it just kind of landed me in the position where I'm at now. So although I hate labels, they are kind of like, we're sort of stuck with them because we try to convey concepts, and we're sort of trapped in language, and part of language is labels, and there's different flavors for everything. There's hard atheist, soft atheist, agnostic atheist, Gnostic atheist. There's just every sort of version of any ism you could think of. And so I'm like a non-dualist atheist, meaning, non-dualism, a huge topic, but I don't want to bore everybody with that right now. But basically, that's where I'm at now. If you're familiar with non-dualism and atheism and all that good stuff, that's where I'm at. I do a channel, host a channel called The Mirror Point, where, I met Objective Ethics and Nell, who's on the panel, and all that good stuff. And Robin comes through, every time I have a show, which I appreciate all of that. So you're more than welcome to join the community. I try to do exactly what Objective Ethics is doing right now, which is to open up friendly conversation, non-confrontational, people of different beliefs, and just sort of share ideas and share philosophical viewpoints. And, Nell, she was working on a model here recently for a metaphysical position, and we kind of teamed up with Sophia, and we've been working on that with Nell. It's been a lot of fun, and we do stuff like that. We just like to explore different ways of perceiving reality. It doesn't have to be, this, versus that. I mean, everybody's got a right, and to form their own views, and what resonates with one person is not going to resonate with another. So I always like to say, your beliefs are not as important as your ethics, how you treat others. That's the real main thing here for me. I don't really give a crap about what your philosophical views are, what mine are, or anything like that. I think that reality is so much bigger than our beliefs and our models and frameworks, but they are fun to talk about. And they are fun to compare, and they are fun to debate, and they're just a lot of fun to discuss, because really that's part of life. So welcome, fellow travelers. I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you for sharing all that. And I agree. That resonates with me, and that I do want us to get to a point in life where we learn to celebrate diversity and not be afraid of it, because while I do want us to have a globalization in a sense that I want us to all have mutual respect and to understand that we're all brothers and sisters in humanity, that we're all a family because we're all human beings and we share one planet. So it's basically just like one house, right, that we all live in. That doesn't mean I want everybody to have the same ideas, right? I think we need to have different ideas. When everybody has the same idea, nobody's thinking critically at that point. Nobody's pushing back on the group. And it leads to what I call collective ignorance. And that's very dangerous. So we don't want to go too far with it. I'm not saying we need like a globalization of government or something like that necessarily, or globalization of politics or religion or whatever, or anti-religion, but we do need to have a certain global effort that we want to take care of the planet, that we want to take care of each other, and that we all want to live our best life. And what I've said before on this channel is that if my neighbor isn't starving, right, if he's got enough to eat, then he's far less likely to come try and steal my food. If my neighbor is healthy and vaccinated, he's far less likely to give me a communicable disease, right? If my neighbor is happy, he's far less likely for his trauma or his unhappiness to affect my life negatively. So for me to live my best life, it's in my benefit, selfishly, to make sure my neighbor has everything that they need. And if we can understand this core principle, this gives us the motive, not just the motivation, but the reason, the intellectual understanding of why I want everyone to support each other, because it lets us all live our best life. And that's going to let me live my best life ultimately. So that's what I've tried to do here. And I appreciate that people here are participating in that. Scales, you're up next, my friend. Feel free to go ahead. And I know you have different beliefs about theology, but you have a very unique position. It's definitely not orthodox by any stretch of the imagination. It's nice to have you join us.
Yeah, how's it going? I would
To
say
the dream, family.
yeah. I would say that I have deconstructed myself from religion, and just like Scott, I grew up Jehovah's Witness. Although I would say that my family was pretty lenient, and they did birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. But my grandma was very serious about it, but she was still very lenient. But eventually I got out of it because I just found out one day that it's all copied from older mythologies, which is something that I suspected when one day they changed the Bible, because I had a Bible that I would bring there. And I think it was from like 1987 or something. And then in 2009, they come out with their gray Bibles. And I was just like, well, wait a second. Why are they changing the Bibles? It didn't make any sense to me. And then they basically said they basically told me they're doing it to dumb it down and make it easier for people to understand, was what my family told me. And that just didn't make any sense. So then, I kind of thought, well, if I knew what the oldest thing said, then I would probably know what the Bible's talking about. And then one day I found out what it was based on. It was just based on old mythology from Mesopotamia. And then I was pretty much no longer religious. I no longer believed in any of the religions once I found that out. But I didn't become an atheist. I went down the path of the esoteric and the occult and the mythology. And I decided that the ancients went through something, and we need to understand what they're trying to communicate, because their trauma is our trauma. And so that's really probably been the foundational axiom for my self-education, because nothing you'll hear me talk about comes from school or anything like that. But yeah, I went down the occult path, really. And now recently I did come up with my own model, which is what Scott was talking about, how models can't explain everything, and I agree with that. But I think that I came up with a pretty good model that explains the human condition, and it does revolve around what I think is the most important thing, objective morality, or that's one of the things within it. And basically, all it takes to be an objectively moral person is do not engage in the 7 acts, which are transgressions, or be complacent with them, which are murder, rape, assault, theft, trespass, deception, and coercion. And live your life in alignment with the sacred principles, which are self-responsibility for your own actions, the non-initiation of harm unto others, self-defense when harm has been initiated, and service unto others, expecting nothing in return. These are basically the sacred foundational principles across every religion when it boils down to it. And that is basically the path to creating a better world, is people rejecting what's bad and allowing people to live their lives, because as objective ethics was saying, nuance is not a bad thing. And the things that I just described, those actions I just named, are the destroyers of nuance, because they restrict people from living their life the way they want to in a world when they're living a life that is not harmful to others. But the moment you do harm others, you interfere with their ability to interact in the world, and that is what is objectively immoral.
Yeah, a lot of that resonated with me, actually. I agree with I like your 7, I don't know if you call them virtues or how you phrase that exactly, but I think that's a great starting point for a lot of people. Coercion is a really big one. And I appreciate you sharing that in such a respectful manner, given the nature of the topic today, Set Scales. You're a very considerate human being. Appreciate you for that. Andy, it's so good to have you up here, brother. I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday. That was so fascinating. It kind of went a little bit like, I don't want to say off the rails, because it was a great stream, actually. But yeah, I have to apologize again. I meant to, my intention was for Andy and I to do, like, I don't know what you call it, like film a video or whatever. And then I was going to post it to my channel later. And somehow I screwed up the settings. I still don't know what I did wrong, because I've done it before in the past one time, but I ended up hitting like a go live button and realized at the last second that we were actually doing a live stream. And so we just I literally just got done telling Andy, don't worry about if we make any mistakes. I'm recording this. We can edit it out later. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, Andy, we're going live.
Well, in your defense, I thought ahead of time that it already was going to be live. So it was like water off a duck's back for me.
You handled it like a true professional, my friend. The floor is yours. Introduce yourself. Tell people what you're into, how you feel about the topic at hand.
Great. Jill's here. Now it's a party.
Awesome. Welcome, Jill. You're one of my favorites. My name's Andy. I'm a non-believer in the biblical God, or any gods for that matter. As far as religion goes, I think it's extremely dangerous and harmful to society, and it halts progression. It halts us from moving toward a place of less suffering for the masses. And I think that religion is the exact sort of thing that enables, the king dictator mentality. It's the most effective tool for a dictator or a king to obtain and remain in power. And yeah, I think that there are no good reasons to believe that the God of the Bible is real, or that Jesus is the Messiah, or that any of these miraculous claims happened. And I think that people should wake up to that and really take the time to study the Bible and realize for yourself just how silly it is, because you're living your life. Not everybody, but some people are living their lives, based on Iron Age and Bronze Age Canaanite morals, where people thought it was okay to sacrifice your children to protect your house, or, you were allowed to beat your slave until they were almost dead if they disobeyed you, or, the community should stone a child if they disobey a father, or just things like that. And, women not having rights and being property. And it's just an outdated way of living. It was effective during that time period, and it helped people move forward to something even more effective than that. But it's outdated in our society, and it's causing a lot of people harm. It has been for millennia now, and it's about time that people wake up to the fact that the Abrahamic religions are disgusting and violent and oppressive, and they should leave them behind. That is all.
Sorry, I'm just typing a little note here too. Okay, just want to make sure that I just reiterate, because I know we have some late people joining. I do have some theists who are in the chat, and it's always nice to have diversity and diverse ideas. And as you all know, because the people I'm talking to, I've spoken to before, I've always been very tolerant and patient with a lot of the behavior and the antics, frankly. Today is not the day. I'm not going to put up with people preaching or condemning. Like I said, I don't normally have like a no preaching rule or whatever on this channel, because I think it just is all silliness to me. And if people can't deal with it, they could just tell you to shut up or whatever. But today is not the day for it. And I'm going to be pretty hard about that. So I don't think I've ever kicked anybody out off this channel. I've never muted anybody. So maybe one time it was getting out of control or something like that. But the whole time I've been doing this channel, I've never had to kick anybody out, and I don't want to have to do that. So I'm going to ask you all to police yourselves and police your own behavior, please. Robin, I think, is in and out of the chat, and she has my full support. So whatever decision she decides to make, I stand behind it, regardless of what it is. So if you guys, Robin, she does not mess around. So just be on your best behavior, please. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, Andy, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm just going to go ahead and open it up now. Somebody had a question. I believe it was Bionic. That was a long time ago now. I believe Bionic. I don't know if you want to re-ask it or if you want to join the panel. You're always welcome to join the conversation. I love it when you join us, and I'm so grateful to have you as a member of this community. But I believe, if I remember right, Bionic was saying something to the extent of, does anybody on the panel have any advice for somebody who is going through the process of deconstruction? Let me know if I got that right, Bionic. I think that's how you worded it. And this is a question for anybody on the panel.
Find community.
I would say do a lot of studying and make sure that you come to the correct conclusions.
Don't get too set into a belief system, and keep an open mind that you could be wrong, because you most often are.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Just expose yourself to all the ideas that you were not able to be exposed to, if that was the case, or just really explore and figure it out for yourself, and don't worry how long it takes, because for some people it takes decades. So
From my perspective, since I didn't have a long, drawn out, hard time, I kind of started from what was my main goal. And my main goal was to figure out what was true. And like, I didn't miss the community that I got exiled from. I wasn't looking for another community. I wasn't looking for any sort of spirituality. I wasn't looking for a safety net. I just wanted to know what was real. And that ended up being my guide stone. So, like, if it is the community that you miss about the church, then yeah, probably you find a new community. If it's other things, then find that. Because if you figure out what your guide stone is and go for that, then I think the rest might fall into place.
I would suggest that, depending on, how long you've been part of that religion, how attached you've become to that religion, you may want to seek out professional help to sort of, deconstruct. It's a process, and it's not easy. There is such a thing called religious trauma, and I definitely suffered from it in many ways. And it took me a long time to sort of deconstruct out of it on my own, but it would have been very helpful if I would have had someone to speak to, maybe a professional psychologist, someone who understands the situation, who has experience working with people in a similar situation. After that, I think you need to just really, the whole point is to kind of build your legs back up and have confidence in yourself. As far as finding out what's true, the one thing we can't doubt is that we experience beingness. We are beings. We have agency. That's real, because to deny that you're having an experience is sort of self-refuting. You can't really say, you can doubt anything you want, but you can't doubt that you have doubt, right? So you can recognize that. And oftentimes it's a blind spot for a lot of people. We just kind of carry on like the things we interpret in the world and infer about reality. We mistake these maps for the territory. The only thing we really know for certain 100% is that we are existing. We do have agency. That's where we ground all our ethics. It's where we ground our values, our everything, all our inferences. But they all happen within that awareness of being, all of that stuff, even the thoughts, the beliefs, and the interpretations, all the inferences, they're transient. What the philosophers call contents of consciousness or whatever. But the one thing that's always there is an awareness. It's the condition for all those experiences and contents. And so if you can just recognize that and you can respect that, and it really bleeds off into the relationship you have with the rest of the world, especially among living creatures. You know, the one thing we all have in common is we're all having an awareness of an experience, and we all bleed the same, we all hurt the same, regardless of our race, regardless of where we come from, our religious backgrounds, all of that stuff. We are all really, when we strip away identity, there's just awareness of being stuff. And I think that's enough commonality to build bridges to make the world a better place. That's why I resonate with Objective Ethics channel so much, man, because we really started out that way, discussing these things and understanding these viewpoints, that's really what's important. And yeah, and I just think, yeah, first step, get help, get professional help if you need it.
Recovering from religion is a really good resource if you don't have any. I would highly recommend them.
Yeah.
And
They can get you set up with a therapist. They can help you find whoever you need to in your journey. So
I would also say it's important to recognize exactly what religion is. And the way I define religion is etymologically coming from the Latin root religare, which means to bind or rebind. What this means is that people are basically binding their minds and their thoughts to ideas that other people have about the world. So religion is not just something like Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or whatever. It could be sports. It could be celebrities. It could be politics or money or anything that people idolize. That is, they become fixated on this one thing and they think this is this one thing that's going to get them through life, whether it's happiness or stability or whatever it is. And they miss all the other possibilities and potential around them, not just for themselves, but for other people. And it basically restricts people's imagination by funneling down this path that was thought of by other people. But at the same time, there is something that we can bind ourselves to, which is the truth. If we bind ourselves to the truth, then we're not in a state of binding ourselves to people's ideas, which are typically fleeting. Now we're bounded to ourselves. That's something that's grounded and does not change.
Yes, I agree with that so much, man. These beliefs are sometimes inherited, and beliefs, you know, by definition, like you said, they're fleeting and they're just thoughts. And we know that the human mind is very limited. No one's omniscient. No one really knows the answer or has the access to fundamental reality. Objectivity, while I believe objective facts exist and objective facts do ingress upon everybody, I don't think we necessarily have access to objective reality because of the nature of the human mind. You know, we're limited to a perception. But, you know, we get closer to truth when we start with the correct epistemology that, first of all, we exist. You know, we're having a conscious experience and others are too. You know, I mean, there's no solve to the hard problem of solipsism, but I think that, you know, the next most parsimonious thing to do is, you know, to at least allow other people to have their own conscious, valid experience as well. And I think most people do. I think we all do that, don't we? And if we do, then we can become much more empathetic and sympathetic with others. And yeah, we don't allow religions to really bear upon our life like that. It's really bullshit.
Yeah. And the advice I would give is just, try to avoid dogmatic thinking, because, for me, the journey to atheism was just the beginning of my intellectual journey. If you can easily fall into the trap of, oh, I'm an I got myself out of religion, I'm an atheist now. Now I have all the answers. But the truth is, you don't have all the answers. You could be wrong about, your stance on free will. You could be wrong about your stance on the physical world. You could be wrong on your stance on morality. You need to start, if you can deconstruct and deconvert from theism, then start looking at every other belief that you hold. Don't just take anything for granted. And then the other thing I would say is, when another thing that I experienced, when I left, or when I became an atheist, was nihilism. And it only was years later that I realized, because there's the stereotype that, oh, atheism leads to nihilism, but to me it's like, no, what put me into that nihilistic pit was my theism, and it just then all of a sudden be stripped away from beneath my feet. Because when you're a theist and you make God the center of your world, God is everything, and then all of a sudden that's gone. That just leaves a giant void, and you're gonna feel purposeless. And it took me a while to finally realize, oh, I can make my own meaning and purpose in life. But it's like, it wasn't atheism itself that drove me to this meaningless, that feeling of meaninglessness. It was the fact that I had this this belief that encompassed my entire identity, and then it was gone. So
I would
want to
like
give a quick shout out really quickly. I don't want to divert here, but I see James Apperson has stopped by. Brother, it's so nice to see you, family. I've been missing you. I haven't seen a lot of content coming up on your channel. I might just be missing it because I've been very busy, but please do check out James's channel. He goes by A Person Non Grata, which I do love that name. So please check out James Apperson's channel. He's a great member of the skeptic community, very humble gentleman, and very intelligent. So really just honored and humbled to see you stop by here today and share time with us. Really appreciate all the feedback that everybody's giving. I agree with everything that everyone's been saying, and I've been trying to keep up and type this stuff into the chat just so people can kind of follow along. And so you guys are all bringing up some really valuable responses to that question. And Bionic, Chris, I just really appreciate you asking that question, because it's really important, because RTS is a real thing. And rejection is a big part of the deconstruction process, and nobody wants to feel rejected. That's the thing that we need to understand, even if for the solipsist out there. Even though, as Scott said, we can't solve hard solipsism. It's one of the unsolvable problems. But if we understand what living a good life is, and it's about being chosen, right? That's what we want. So even if all of you are just actors playing out in my own consciousness, in my own conscious experience, I want you all to choose me. I don't want to be some kind of a tyrant that forces you, like autonomous robots that have to do what I say and respect me and be nice to me. I want you to choose me and to be nice to me and respect me because I'm doing the right thing. That's what I want. Even if all of you don't really exist, it's all in my own head, right? And since I do believe that you all exist, it's even more important to me to have that position that, I think that's one of the things kind of resonates with what Set Scales was talking about, coercion. And we see this in these organized religions. There's a lot of fear mongering that goes on, right? The threat of hell, the threat of just, being destroyed when everybody else gets to live eternally in paradise, to be not selected among the chosen, right? No, this is one of the really harmful beliefs that are foundational in these organized religions. And what we want is, if there was a God, we would want a God that would want to be chosen. And to be chosen, we need to humble ourselves and to be setting the example that we want people to follow. It was that Gandhi said, be the change you want to see the world make, right?
Oh, and I was reading some of the comments. I just want to clarify that, I'm not saying nihilism is a terrible position to hold, but I do think you got to be in the right headspace to tackle that kind of thing. And coming off straight from deconverting, I don't think that's the best headspace to be, tackling that type of thing.
Yeah, nihilism is an interesting one, because with nihilism, again, these labels can get a little bit dicey, but technically speaking, nihilism is simply the position that there is no objective moral truths, which I obviously reject, and there is no objective purpose, which I accept. I don't think that we have inherent rights or duties. There's not inherent values per se. We have to give these things. These good, these positive, negatives. These are all going to be subjective, right? I have to give value to my own life. I have to search out what is actually valuable to me. Now, I have come to the understanding, because I do believe that morality is objective, and I do understand that my best life can only be truly attained if everyone around me, which includes everybody on this planet, is able to live their best life. Right. And you're going to all live your best life just like I am if we have the freedom to make our own choices. Right. A person who is free to make their choices is going to be much more productive than a person that has to work as a slave or is obligated to a particular duty. Right. So that's the foundation of all of this.
The objective subjective.
I just wanted to comment on knowing, because I heard some people say that something like we can't know the truth. But the way I look at it is I exist and everything else around me exists. So that means that we're part of a shared existence. And because we're part of a shared existence, that means that we all come from the same thing. Which means that if I come from existence, I should be more than capable of knowing and understanding the shared existence that I am in with everything else around me. Now, it's just not to the degree of knowing absolutely everything that's going on at all times. That's not what a human, first of all, can't possibly know all that, nor do they need to. All they need to know is enough to live a good life, to create their own value in the world. And I think that human beings are more than capable of doing that with the natural senses that we have.
Yeah, I kind of believe that too. I would call myself a non-dualist out of convention, but I also understand the virtue of dualism. And it does have a operational meaning. In other words, what good is it if I'm only feeding myself, but I'm not feeding someone else, the other? That's where the moral gets sort of grounded in that relationship. So there's a relation that grounds the dualistic appearance, anyways. But, it all sort of dissolves into a oneness. I mean, reality is just one big thing. It's just that we're sort of disassociated from each other relationally, but we're all an awareness of an experience of something. I can't be you. I'm not having your experience right now. I'm having mine. And that's because there's a boundary. There's a relation there, for a good reason. But it's very interesting because this kind of gives you the value of morality. Like objective ethics talked about objective morality. I'm kind of like where I say it's both true, that it's objective and subjective. The subjective is what gives it all the meaning. And I mean, really, that's really what it's grounded in, your subjective experience. But, we have intuitions. We are part of nature. We're not outside of nature or outside of reality. We're part of it. So all of this stuff is just grounded in nature and expressed through our intuitions and our mind and our language and our behaviors and all that good stuff. So it's really interesting. But, you know, the subjective part has a very real import and impact. You know, that's what gives everything the meaning. If we're all just one thing and just one big soup, then it wouldn't really mean anything, would it?
Yeah. So let me get this straight. You're saying it's objectively true for your subjective opinion.
No,
so.
Scott is absolutely right, because everyone's subjective experience is an objective fact. Everyone right now is experiencing this panel, but they're only experiencing it from their point of view. And what becomes immoral is when someone comes along and they take someone's objective experience and they try to funnel it down a path that they want them to go down, that person does not want to. It's the act of containment through involuntary action. And that's why I named those 7 actions, because that's what they do. They restrict the individual from subjectively expressing themselves in the objective world, which is shared by all subjective experiences. That's why it's both subjective and objective at the same time.
Bingo. I like the way you put that. You should come on my channel, man. We need to do an interview.
I just put out a video today where the past couple weeks I've been hearing people ask a lot of questions or say these things, and I'm just like, what I'm working on I think is going to answer all these questions. And today I just put out the blueprint for what I'm working on, and it's called the Unified Topological Ontology, and it just basically explains what reality is, what objective morality is within reality, how humans are, why we're in the state we're in, and how we can get out of the state we're in or create a better state.
Sounds like a really big project, Set Scales. I wish you the best of luck with that.
It's huge. And the other thing that I was just thinking when you said all that, about the modeling and, and it's really kind of generally typical whenever you join panels with atheist and philosopher type people, and even atheists and people of that nature, there's this whole conversation about the right brain versus the left brain. And it seems like, most of your engineering types, the kind of people that program code or, are engineers, they do stuff very intellectually and logically. Those sort of people, the way that they're wired on that spectrum of mind, seem to be the kind of people that like problems that can be solved in principle. So they like to really dig into the details and connect everything together and come up with a beautiful solution to particular problems. Now, from what I understand, the people with the right brain, they're totally different. They love when problems cannot be solved. They love problems that cannot be solved. That's why they deal a lot with fellow human beings like your salesmen and your artists and your people that relate to crowds and audiences and entertain and stuff like that. They're very creative, very intuitive. They're what you call your right brain people. And what it seems like with the right brain people, they've spent their entire life busting their head against brick walls dealing with other human beings, and they've gotten really good at it. But they never really solve anything because humans are a problem that cannot be solved. And this is why your left brain people, generally your engineers and software coders and computer people, they usually stay away from the public. And they usually have representatives deal with the public, because of the way that they are. They're more about, they talk their own language. They're sort of impatient. They understand their logic. And if you don't fit into that, it just doesn't make sense to them. So a lot of right brain stuff really just doesn't cohere with the way they approach reality from their own subjective experience. But, the way that I'm attempting is to sort of be more holistic. My belief is that to be really effective in the world and to sort of optimize for your peace of mind and happiness is to be balanced. if you can now, and no one can really help, who they are. Some people just can't help it. We're all on a spectrum. Luckily for me, I'm split right down the middle. I did all these cognitive tests for these IT jobs and different jobs that I've had throughout history. And turns out that I'm split right down the middle, which is a blessing. But, most people are not like that. And so this creates sort of a communication problem. This is why theists and atheists never really see eye to eye, because a lot of people come at it from a feelings point of view, like, not to be generalizing, males and females, everybody's on a spectrum, but, a lot of females, according to studies, is that they're very right-brained, or they can be. And a lot of men are very logically minded, and they don't understand. And there's this communication problem. It's like, hey, if I go in here and wash the dishes and I did all the things, it should equal, us getting along or whatever the goal was. Sometimes that's not what it really is. A lot of times, people who are right brain just want to be heard and understood, and it's not just a woman thing. There's men like that too. So I don't mean to say that, but
we believe in equality around here. So Scott, you're welcome to come wash my dishes anytime you want, brother.
If I can jump in here for a second.
Yeah, of course. And I want to give James a chance to speak too. So go ahead, Gretchen.
We know a lot more about the right brain, left brain thing, and that it is generally an old wives' tale at this point.
Yep.
There is no such thing as right or left brain dominance. Yes, it is a spectrum, and pretty much everybody is right down the middle with certain things being. And we've also learned since then that it's the entire brain that is needed for these creative endeavors, not just one side or the other.
Right.
The right and left brain is more responsible for being right or left-handed. Yes, so physiologically that does make sense. But other than that, just, being, I'm left brain, so I'm good at art, and I'm right brain, so I'm good at,
Yeah,
exactly. That is not real. They put that down around the same time that they decided that they figured out that IQ tests really are pointless. So
that's good to know.
They're not pointless. You're just saying I got a perfect 100 on mine, so you guys can eat it.
Well, if it's a race to first, number one, then I'm beating you, James. I'm by 67. I'm a lot closer to one than you are.
No.
Let me just.
Arpy got 135 drunk, so.
Oh, though that's the secret. Though that's my problem. I don't drink that much.
Man.
That's my problem. I don't drink that much anymore. I'm not against it. I just don't really drink that much anymore. But James, I don't know how long you were sitting backstage. I'm so embarrassed. I just realized hopefully it wasn't very long. I'm so bad at running these shows. But you have just joining us, so please take the floor and introduce yourself. Tell people if you're still putting out content, where they can find you, and anything else you'd like to say.
Oh, so to be clear about this, I have not been live streaming lately, and I probably will get back to it soon. In the meantime, the real reason I'm here on this panel today is because when I get to hang out with all these brilliant people, it makes me look good. Like, look at me all rubbing shoulders with all these intellectual, brilliant people. And so I'm just here to be part of the Brady Bunch happening. And, I'm a surfer when it comes to conversations. I kind of wait for just the right conversational wave, and when I see it, I run out there with my board and jump on it. But until then, I'm usually pretty silent in these panels.
I love it. I love the analogy because I am a surfer. I'm a SoCal boy myself. Grew up in San Diego and surfed Garfield Beach a lot and all the good joints. So yeah, I'm down with that analogy.
Nice.
So I really do appreciate, Gretchen, you saying something like that. The brain works in what they call bilaterally. So as you were saying, it has more to do with how the right side of the brain controls left side of the body functions. The left side of the brain controls right side body functions. It has less to do with psychology. There's a lot of older psychology, like with Freud, for example, that while it was useful, very much like Darwinism was useful because it got us thinking about a lot of things that weren't being addressed, we've significantly improved our understanding of those things, right? Since Freud and Darwin and stuff like that, which is one of the things that really pisses me off when I hear creationists trying to say that evolution is false and all this other bullshit. And they're always
Right.
citing like Darwin was a racist and Darwin said this. And it's like, yeah, you're talking about something that's 150 years old. Why don't you actually engage with the modern science? You know, like, come on, man. This is such a straw man at this point, you know?
Yeah, that's good information to correct me on, because I was actually talking about the same thing, and I meant to say that, because that whole right brain, left brain thing, I use that sort of just because people understand what I'm talking about, but I always try to say it's not really, you know, it's a sort of an old wives' tale, but it does point to, you know, being on a spectrum of, I guess is the best way to put it, is that we're on a spectrum of, you know, super hyper logical versus super hyper intuitive and creative without any sort of, but you know, in real life, it's never really that cut and dry. I think that, you know, it's just people and people gravitate to one thing or the other, maybe based on nurture, you know, nurturing. Maybe they're just kind of taught to think logically or think religiously or whatever the case might be. Not necessarily a genetic thing necessarily.
Well, there's a combination of things, and this is one of the arguments that I make against libertarian free will, is that on one hand, we are in fact a product of our environment. However, there are genetics that are involved in that as well, right? So it's a combination of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And you know,
And you know,
that's
once you're
always good stuff.
institutionalized and you're indoctrinated into something, never underestimate the human being's capacity to take the path of least resistance.
Yes.
Survival mechanism that's has to do with our evolution, because we're a social
Stay with
species.
the herd.
Yep, exactly. We want to be part of the group because we need the group for our survival.
That's why I'm on this panel right now.
We are a product of our environments and genetics combined.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's why I'm not, as much as I talk about things like having smaller families. I think it's unethical to have 6-7 kids, even more than, really frankly, to have more than 2 kids, to be honest with you. But you know, that's pretty extreme at this point, you know, because there's people who aren't having kids, and they say the replacement rate is something like 2.3. So whoever's having that 0.3, you know, 1/3 of a child, I don't know how that works out for them, but the point being that I don't think it's a good idea to be having large families like that because of the burden on the environment, on the planet itself. But I do think that it's extremely important to take parenting seriously. I'm very much an advocate for 2-parent households. It doesn't have to be biological parents, doesn't have to be a man and a woman, any 2 functional adults, as far as I'm concerned. And I think if people can't support a child and provide a child with as many reasonable opportunities for them to live the best life possible, I don't think people should be having those children, frankly. Now, things happen, though. So we don't want to vilify people for deciding to go through with a pregnancy they weren't planning on having. We don't want to vilify people for having an abortion. It's a woman's right to choose what to do with their body, too. We have to understand that. But I do think that when it, you know, one of the reasons I'm also in support of MAID, medical assistance in dying, I'm a big proponent of that because of autonomy. I think if people don't want to play the game anymore, we should give them a humane access to get off the ride. You know, I think I don't understand why that isn't a thing in most countries. It's only a couple countries, I think, in Switzerland and Canada is the only ones I know about that actually even do that.
The state of Oregon, they do it.
Really?
The state of Oregon does that? Oh, I didn't know that.
Like Louis C.K. says, life is really not that important.
Well, I think that it touches on what like Nell was talking about with nihilism, right? Is that nihilism is something that people do go through, I think, a lot of times in deconstruction. And what's really interesting to me, just being an outside observer, because as I said before, I've never been a religious person, so I'm just kind of watching all this from the bleachers. But if you're raised to believe that a God gives you purpose in life and created you for a specific purpose, right, then you're naturally going to have to deal with nihilism. And if you deconstruct from that belief, it's like, okay, now what purpose do I have? But Nietzsche said that nihilism is not the end, it's the beginning, right? That's just the beginning stage. You're recognizing that you give yourself purpose, and that's the journey that you're on. And he also said, you know, value the experience. This is a big part of Buddhism, right? Understanding the value of each experience. And I'm not a Buddhist myself, and maybe a secular Buddhist to a certain degree, because I do believe in a lot of the philosophy of Buddhism. I think it's very beneficial, trying to understand what Buddha meant when he was talking about the middle way. I think that's what objective morality and virtue is really all about, is having this balance between too much and too little, and how to apply that to our lives. Balance is extremely important in everything. And so I think it all ties together. But this nihilism thing, the journey is very important. Just because you don't have this invisible guy up in the sky who watches you sleep, telling you what your purpose is, doesn't mean that there can be no purpose. It doesn't mean there is no value that you can ascribe to your life, just because we don't have inherent value per se, right?
I never really got the nihilism when I deconstructed. I know I'm not every person who's deconstructed, but even after all that I went through, it's just I realized that we make our own purpose in our own lives, even if you think you get it from a god or not. So really, the meaning of life is what you make it.
Yeah, no. I mean, for me, like, growing up, I was deep in, Roman Catholicism. That's what my parents were. They were also deeply conservative, and I was, entrenched in that Catholic culture. I was, put into a private Catholic school run by nuns. Hit you with rulers, and every Sunday I would go to CCD, and I was just, and I took all that very seriously, like, to the point that, one of the things that I would, daydream about was like, oh, all these people being a martyr, maybe I could one day be a martyr. And then, thinking back on that, like, how fucked up is that they're trying to convince me to get myself killed for this religious belief, on top of, and since I took these things seriously, one of the, Catholic teachings is that demons are real and that they can possess you. Not only that, but they're not just going to go after bad people, but they're actually going to try to possess good people as a test of character or strength. And so that caused me religious trauma that I had to deal with, during my deconversion. And, so, combined all that, and I was just not in a very good place to handle nihilism when I was deconstructing, because for me, that just, after I lost God, essentially, it was just, me coming to terms with a meaningless, at least inherently meaningless life. It just took me in a dark direction, and it took me a while to get out of that pit. And and now, looking back on it, it's like, yeah, I guess, I realize, yeah, there is no inherent meaning, and that's all right. I can, like you said, I can make my own meaning, but like, for me, at least my own personal journey, it took me a while to get to that level, and be able to deal with it.
Yeah, thank goodness we don't have some meaning baked into the universe. That would suck.
Yeah, I think something interesting just happened over the last three people that spoke. We went from speaking about purpose to meaning, and I think that they're similar, but there's a very nuanced difference. The way I see purpose is something that is ascribed by the creator of that thing. And so if there's no creator to life, there's not necessarily a purpose, but we can still have meaning, because meaning is derived by the observer. So imagine a painting. A painter would ascribe purpose to the painting, but the observer can project their own meaning onto that when they're observing it.
Yeah, RP,
that's
I'm
a nice
so
way
glad
of
that you
looking at
brought
it.
that up and highlighted that, because I'm actually having a conversation. I've got a guest who's coming onto the channel. I've had him on, I believe I did talk to him one time on this channel before. We were doing a comparative religion conversation. Tavo Sanabri. Some of you may know who he is. He gets around the community. Very nice gentleman. We've had really polite conversations. I don't agree with his position on Christianity, obviously, but I do really enjoy the conversations I have with him, because he's very intelligent. But he has a
That was
video.
cool.
He is. He has a video talking about purpose. And, you know, I said, I pushed back a little bit with him in a conversation, I think either via email or in the comments, saying that when we use the word purpose, we're really anthropomorphizing the situation, in my opinion, right? Because purpose shows intent by most people's understanding.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between having a function and having a purpose, or cause and effect that happens naturally because of the laws of physics, and having a purpose. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like the difference between reason, purpose, and meaning. Like people like to interchange these three terms, whereas, like, you know, they do have similar meanings, but there is a slight difference. And I think it's important to be careful about the terminology that you use to be, you know, as accurate as you can be when discussing these topics.
It reminds me of Rick and Morty when he had the butter robot, and it's, what is my purpose? And it's to pass the butter. And then he realizes it and he says,
Oh
oh
my
my God. Yeah. Because he just completed his purpose, so what good is he, you know? But yeah, I agree. I don't think it's necessarily a purpose, because there is no intentional like, you know, inherent one thing that anyone has to do in order to be considered fulfilled. It's considering yourself fulfilled is an emotional experience. So it is entirely subjective, in my opinion. So
I think that there's an identity problem when we talk about purpose and meaning and will, because, like, for me, like, for example, like, the way I look at it is I do a lot of things that have no real, it can be argued that I have no practical reason to do the things I do, like, you know, the podcast I do. Maybe there's no purpose to, you know, I write music, stuff like that. I'm not making a whole lot of money. People in my family ask, well, why do you do that? If it's not, what's the purpose? And really, it's not like any sort of purpose that I would attribute to it would be after the fact. I do all of that first, and then I try to formulate a rationalization for what I've done, to say, oh, I'm doing it because I guess I want to sell it, or I want to make money, or I want to have this, or do something, come up with some sort of narrative or story to explain behavior. But actually, all it really is its nature sort of imposing its will on you, if you want to use that language. Not necessarily intentional, but it's just a reflexive thing, it is what it is. You know, it's a matter of genetics. It's a matter of all the priors, all the things that in nature makes you, or whatever even that means. So if I say that really the idea of Scott, you know, the non-dualist, well, that's just the label. That's just the name. That's just language that reflects like some identity construct. At the end of the day, you know, the self, the identity gets back to what objective ethics was talking about with free will. All of that stuff is happening without your intention. It's been determined that you're going to act a particular way in many cases. I mean, you exist within a context, you know, you didn't choose when you were born. You didn't choose your genetics. You didn't choose your predispositions. You didn't choose any of that stuff. It just happened to the quote unquote you. So it's just nature expressing itself through you. And we like to call it our choices and our decisions and all of that stuff. Could very well be that nature is just predetermined. It's all just been determined to roll out a certain kind of way, to unfold. And you're just in that process experiencing the unfolding. And because you don't know the future, it gives you sort of this illusion of free will, you know, but really you're just an expression of nature. That's really all you are, if anything. And so the identities are sort of constructs. And this sort of changes the whole idea about, you know, those sort of things.
I really am enjoying all of this feedback that everybody's giving. I do have to start winding it down. And the way I run the show is I always give everybody on the panel a chance to have kind of a final word, and that's uninterrupted. That way, if anybody, sometimes we're pushing back on each other's ideas, and I like to give everybody an opportunity to, have a minute to kind of just have their own thoughts. Zill, I see you just popped in the panel. I was literally getting ready to. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll let you have your opening statement and your final word all at the same time. How about that? So what we'll do is we're just going to go around the room and give everybody an opportunity to say whatever they'd like to say, hopefully related to the topic, and keep it respectful as always. And I'll try to go in reverse order so that we'll give Gretchen and Arpy the final word. So let's start down here. Is it Zill? I know I've seen you before, I think, on DWs.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So you're welcome to be
Actually,
our
I wouldn't mind going first because I need to get to sleep. My eyes are closing. I've
perfect.
been up
Oh,
since yesterday.
okay.
All right, so you guys
Miss
I gotta wake up and do
Bossy.
another
Here.
stream tonight, man.
I know.
So-
I don't know how you guys could do it so consistently and for so many hours on end. I'm honestly, I'm getting kind of wiped out right now, and I still have to go get dinner and stuff
You
myself.
gotta drop your channel though, sucker.
We'll let Gretchen go first, and everybody please mute up, give her the floor, and then we'll just go around the room. Zill, you'll be next.
Drink some water.
Besides, I'm not sure I actually belong here anyway because I didn't have like a real destructive, experience or a really hard deconstruction. So I feel in listening to all these other horror stories, it's just like I almost felt a little bit guilty that I never went through any of that. So, but I mean, thanks for having me, OE. Appreciate it. And, anybody that wants to come check out Async. We're building basically a clubhouse for atheists and even theists. If you really want to tell us what you think, we take up everybody, and it's a good time. And we go all night, and we also have a bunch of songs that you can listen to. So if you're a Justin fan, we got a song for him, and all kinds of stuff. It's just fun. So
Well, absolutely.
that's all I got.
Yeah, no, I'll absolutely plug that. Async Network, please do check them out, support their efforts. That channel is growing so quickly, and there's a reason for it because they're really intelligent people. Gretchen and Arpy are great hosts, and they open it up to anybody who wants to come who can be respectful, hopefully offer a remotely intelligent contribution to the conversation is always nice. But thank you, Gretchen, for stopping by. It's really nice to have you here. I have a lot of respect and appreciation for you, so it's really nice to have you be part of this conversation today.
Thanks for inviting me. Back at you. I respect you too. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Have
And
a good one.
Zill, you're going to be next. Really quick, I just want to say, I noticed there's a bunch of people who jumped in here, and I'm sorry if I didn't say hello to everybody in the comments. I try to say, mention everybody. I see DeFreak, you're out there. Missing Mod. Please do check out Missing Mod's channel for everybody who's here who might know who Missing Mod is. She's a really neat lady, and she also has a really diverse audience that follows her channel. She's really funny, actually, too. And she's got a great Discord server. I might try to remember to get that plugged into the link in this description of this video. So Missing Mod, nice to have you here. Duck, if I didn't say hello yet, DeFreak, JC Denton, nice to see you. All right, Zill, this is your chance to make it or break it here. Please don't make me regret doing this.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, everybody, for such a great conversation today. The ups were up and the downs were down, and we all had really great things to say, and the back and forth was really worth it. So a shout out to you, Brother Objective Ethics, for hosting this conversation that we all participated in and did our best. And we really tried to have, some good understandings and good faith conversations today. So thank you, everybody, for being some suckers.
You need to get a T-shirt or something like that says "sucker." That is so funny. That's like your tagline or something like that. Yeah, Zill, I know that you said that. After hearing you say "suckers," that's actually what reminded me. I have talked to this brother before. I know I have. Just more recently, though. Is it on D&W and Jack Talcott? Is that right?
Yeah, I like to troll Jack a lot, and then wherever the after party is at, I'll troll there too. And your channel is part of the after party, so.
Well, we're glad to have you here. A little bit of trolling toughens us all up, right?
Absolutely. You guys need it because the awesome suckers. But have a good one.
All right, family. Thank you for stopping by today. Set Scales, why don't you go ahead and have the floor? You're up next.
Yeah, it was good talking. I just want to say to check out my video today that I posted called The Unified Topological Ontology Basics, where I basically synthesize history, philosophy, and psychology into one very consistent narrative that explains the human condition and other things. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Short and sweet. All right, very good. Yeah, I think I think the more complicated you can give the title to your theory, it gives it some I don't know, the impression at least that it's going to be really deep and intellectual, right? So I like that. And I do appreciate your contributions today, Set Scales. You're very respectful and very polite, as I've known you to always be. So I really enjoy talking to you, despite the fact that we might have some differences in opinion when it comes down to some of your beliefs about, reality, so to speak. I haven't heard you lay the whole case out in your video. I have talked to you before about some stuff, but I do think that you're a genuine human being and that you do want to be respectful of others and have others be respectful of you. And I think you're on the right track with that.
All right, thank you. You as well. I'll see you.
Thank you so much. All right, James, did you want to go next? Or are you still collecting your thoughts so you could just dump us with a bunch of wisdom all at one time?
I mean, I never have to collect my thoughts. They're all in a very messy junk drawer. I just got to open it.
Just pick up something random,
Sure, absolutely.
like a piece of string for the cat.
Well, I mean, that's how I do live streams, right? I never have a script, and I can go 3 to 5 hours without any prep at all. You can hardly shut me up once you get me going. Everybody knows that. So my big thing this year is ever since January, I've been going through a big transition, and so I stopped. I was in a funk ever since COVID, a deep depression, could not get out of it, bad relationship to food, etc. And so I've been super, super strict lately, with active every day and listening to only positive media. And I've lost since January of this year, I've lost 90 pounds. And so this picture here is my newest picture. And so once I feel like I've made my fitness goals, I'll be going live on camera. That's the thing I'm looking forward to. And for me, that's why I've hardly been around to stream, mostly, because I've been so busy making money and doing training and working out and eating right and being active in the community that I'm hardly ever available to do anything. And that's it. That's what's going on with me right now.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, because fitness, as people who know me, is actually a really big part of my life. I do have some fitness stuff on my channel. I'm actually recovering from major surgery and major health problems, and so I'm trying to get back into the kind of shape that I like to keep myself in. And I've often told people that when it comes to your mental health, your physical health is a huge part of that, right? They actually work together. And so you also need, we talked about earlier, Jack, I think mentioned, and I really appreciate sharing that you need counseling if that's what will help. You need the right medications, so on and so forth, but proper diet, regular exercise, and proper sleep is really important for a healthy lifestyle. It all works together. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I'm so happy to hear that things are going well for you, and surrounding yourself with positive energy is so important, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in all the negativity out there, right? But that doesn't mean that that's all that's out there. And it's also important for us to be part of the positive energy, right? It's like the Buddha would say, you drop a pebble in the pond and it sends out ripples, right? And the same thing, and those ripples go out and they come back. And so we want that positive energy to be those ripples. We want to drop that positive pebble down into the pond and let the positive energy go out and come back. And that's what we have to give to the world. And that's what we want to receive from the world, right?
Right.
90 pounds is incredible, man. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I
I
feel
was going to say the same thing. That's awesome. Good job.
So when I realized I needed to make a change, I would go to bed with toast, And one it just had to be eating all the time. I woke up one morning thinking, did I eat both pieces of toast? And as I sat up, I realized one of the pieces were stuck to my face. I'm like, I might have a problem. I need to do something about this.
Now, everybody here who doesn't know who Captive Desk is, I want you all to check out Dave from the Captive Desk channel. So I just want to make sure, in case he comes across this, we are not toast shaming anybody, right?
There you go. No toast shaming. So I have one meal a day, and it is carefully attenuated to ideal nutrition. I take 25 supplements. I do HIIT workouts almost every day, and like I'm just feeling so much better. But before this, like last Christmas, so what was that, 5-6 months ago? I would get winded rolling over in bed, and I had to catch my breath after rolling over. And now, like, I'm all over the house doing stuff all the time, and I feel like I'm getting myself back, and I just can't tell you how great that's been for me.
Bionic Latino says, sounds like a waste of toast.
It was a waste of toast. I still feel guilty about it.
I think that's hilarious. I'm just so glad you brought that up. And I think, haven't you noticed that it's true, though, that your physical health and your mental and your emotional health are all really tied together?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I like to say, even though I'm not a religious person, I like to say the body's a temple, not an amusement park.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree.
Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and Andy, I heard you pipe up, but you've been so quiet, as you oftentimes are. You're so polite and just kind of wait your turn, but I'd love to hear anything you have to say. It's always valuable. So why don't you take the floor? And
all right. I don't have a ton to say. One thing that I think is important, if I can ever put this message out, is just to love your neighbor, love the people around you. Don't be afraid to sacrifice your time and energy and resources into making someone else's life better if their life isn't as good as where you're at, or if they're going through a tough time, or if you see that they're struggling in any way, extend yourself to them. You know what I mean? It's not that you need something back from them, or that it's that there's a cost. You just know that you're putting that sort of energy back into your community. Because I think in a time like what we live in today, where our government just does not care about the small people anymore, it's up to us to build up a strong community to compensate for that. And we need to set our differences aside. We've sort of fallen into this left and right dichotomy, where everybody thinks that 50% of our nation is at war with the other 50%. And that's propaganda that's being pushed. That's a narrative that's being pushed to divide us, because that's how you conquer large groups of people, is to divide them first. And I think that you'll find that most people fall in the middle, and that it's kind of an illusion. This whole left versus right thing isn't even real. And don't get too bent, or don't get too invested toward what people say online. And something that may seem completely true often turns out to be bullshit. You'll see something presented in sort of like a scientific documentary format, but when you really get to fact checking what's happening, you'll find out that they're lying to you. And so quit trying to take lessons from people, and just read these. And this is in reference to religious texts. Like, if you're going to be reading religious texts and basing your life around it, you should take the time to come to your own conclusions about it, and not let the team tell you what the team thinks about it. Because I think that you'll be surprised with the conclusions that you reach. It's definitely not what it seems, and it's a waste of time, in my opinion. But yeah, all around, I think that people need to return to treating each other like human beings and helping each other when people need help. Everybody, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's food, whether it's just someone to talk to, go out of your way to help people whenever you can. All right, that's it. I'm gonna see you guys later. Take off.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you stopping by. Excuse me. I really appreciate you stopping by, as always, Andy. I'm so glad I've gotten a chance to know you, and I get to bump into you like over on great channels like the Async Network If I haven't mentioned it 100 times yet, my goal was to hit 100 before the show's over. So please, Async Network, subscribe to that channel, support RP and Gretchen's effort over there. That's a great community they've got going on. And Andy's over there sometimes, so you get to engage with him as well. I'm starting to lose track here. I think we're at Scott. Scott, you're up next, brothers. Let me give you the floor here.
All right, cool. Yeah, man. Thank you for the show. Religious trauma is real. I resonate with just about what everybody's saying here on the panel. Feeding too much into beliefs and what other people tell you should believe is just not believing in yourself and simply believing in other people's experience. Believe in your own experience. Be critical, be skeptical. Being skeptical minded is a way of self-respecting yourself. That's what it is. It's not disrespecting other people. You're just showing yourself love and self-respect when you are skeptical and are not gullible. This is important. And it's important to find peace of mind. You know, if you're sort of getting out of religion, seek help. If you get help and you need somewhere to go, just talk to other people, other communities, try everything. That's what life is all about, you know. Meet people, talk to people, investigate things, explore things, learn as much as you can, and really just try to enrich your life, because then you have more data to go by. If you have more data, then you have more to really gauge your life by. The other thing too is objective ethics. You made a good point about physical health. You know, our experiences are 100% dependent on our bodies and our brains. 100%. They're 100% dependent on all of that. So you need to take care of your body and your brain. And the way you do that is you get your blood going, get oxygen, drink lots of water, exercise regularly, feed your mind positive information, like James said. By the way, congratulations, James.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's really my thing, is just let's get out of this dichotomous thinking. Let's get out of the dualism. Let's see ourselves and each other. And we can ground our compassion and empathy in that. And I think we can do it reasonably and rationally. We don't need religions. We don't need gods and devils and angels and spirits to just know the very obvious thing that we all are just an awareness, having an experience of a physical existence. That's obviously what it is. And so that being the case, we can take care of one of each other. We can be compassionate and empathetic. And that's really what we should move towards. You know, this world is so divided. We've got this racial situation with the Carmelo case and all of that. We've got this war in Iran. We've got the Democrats and Republicans at each other's throat. We've got all these religious problems, as per usual. And the only way we're going to get out of that is to really just seek how to love one another, communicate with one another. And as cheesy as that sounds, it really goes back to that. The answer is simple. It's love, which means unity, unification, you know, and that's what we need. And we just need to be creative and figure out ways to achieve that, and also embrace our diversity. We don't all have to think the same. We all don't have to have the same ontologies and beliefs and religions. You can believe in God. You can believe in all that stuff, I think. But we can all coexist all the same. We have no choice. Because like I say, nature is going to express itself the way it will. And some people are just going to be religious. There's nothing you can do about that. No amount of evidence, no amount of philosophy and arguments will change their minds, possibly, in many cases. You just have to let people be people and live, but we have to foster that embracing of unity with each other, you know, regardless. And I guess this is the reason I and Objective Ethics do what we're doing. We're just trying to have these conversations, and it's fun and it's so positive. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you very much, as always, for stopping by. And thank you for everyone also in the chat who stopped by today and kept it mostly respectful. I'm not going to call out any names there. One of the things that somebody had in their closing remark, I believe it was Set Scales, made a comment about reading the texts. And forgive me if I'm describing that to the wrong person, but there's a person who was here earlier, and I'm not going to name any names, but they're pretty well known for saying the Bible translates itself, right? And then of course they go on to just like completely screw up everything in the Bible and misconstrue and misrepresent what's actually in the text. But they are right. The Bible does translate itself. It does speak for itself, I think is how he says that. So the Bible speaks for itself. And it's actually true. Don't be afraid to let these texts, these ancient texts, speak for themselves. And you can see how problematic they are once they start doing that. If you let your pastor or your mentor, whoever you respect as somebody, as a guide, right, tell you what those texts mean, you're probably in a pretty risky situation, right? And now if you have your cognitive faculties, if you have basic reading comprehension, the Bible is literally written at a 7th grade level. I think a lot of people don't realize that. One of the things they tell you when you go to seminary, that blew me away. I couldn't believe it when I heard that when I was at seminary. And they're like, yeah, the Bible is actually written at about what they estimate to be a 7th grade level, reading level. And so, but it makes sense because it was written by Iron Age people who were talking about Bronze Age myths, right? So that really does map onto what you're reading. It's disconnected, it's incoherent, it's contradictory, and it's highly unethical. And let it speak for itself. Speaking of speaking for yourself, Nell, you're up next, and so nice to see you. And as always, you've got my favorite picture. I think it's called a profile picture, if that's what I'm saying correctly. But I love fantasy art, and so I just absolutely love that picture that you've chosen for your whatever you call this thing here.
Oh, thank you. It's a blue tiefling from Dungeons and Dragons, if you're into that sort of thing. But I just wanted to say that what I would like to see is this less dogmatic thinking, because that, to me, that's really what's at the heart of this. It's all these dogmatic beliefs is what really ended up harming me in the end growing up. To the point that it's like my parents preached to me that masturbation was a sin, and that was had to be ashamed of that. And I'm still trying to figure out if all that religious trauma has played a part in me not realizing that I was a trans woman until I was at the age of 35. Just at the tail end of last year is when I started figuring this out for myself. All this, these teachings that just tell you not to explore yourself, that you need to fit within these rigid binaries. Growing up with being taught you got to be act like a man, you got to be all these masculine things. And, it took me a long time to get in touch with my feminine side, and and realize, it's doing these other things, there's really no harm in it, being emotional, or crying, or talking about my feelings. It's like these are actually normal things that you should be able to do. So to me, it's just we need to stop blindly accepting these beliefs that we grew up with, and it's all right to question these your core beliefs. It's all right to be like, hold on, am I truly justified in believing what I'm believing? It's always fine to audit what you're currently believing in. I'd say the biggest danger is to try to tie your beliefs into your core identity. It's like it's your belief, your identity. Who you are as a person. Your beliefs are always going to be shifting, evolving as you go on this journey of life. It's like you're not going to hold the same beliefs that you held 20 20 to 30, 50 years ago than you are today. Just try not to get too attached to your beliefs. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, the not again, like I don't have a religious background, but I did go through a lot of family units when I was a child, and all of them were religious. And the idea, looking back, it's like masturbation is a sin. It's like, well, why would you expect anybody else to want to touch you if you're afraid to touch yourself? It doesn't really make sense. Would you expect other people to respect you if you don't respect yourself, or to like you if you don't like yourself? I mean, some of these ideas are just so incoherent to me. I just don't get it. It's the shame that they want to oppress people with shame and guilt and make you think like without God, your actions are like dirty, filthy rags, as Paul says, right? So crazy. Jack, you're up next. Yeah, I think I'm working my way around the room. Jack, I think you're up next. And thank you. It was so nice to meet you. I just really appreciate you being willing to come by and share your story with us today.
Hey, you're welcome. I want to start out by saying to all the people who are struggling in their life with abuse, especially the children, if there are any listening, don't be afraid to speak out. For every one horrible person, there's 100 good people willing to help you out. And just taking that first step is so important. I regret every day not taking that step, even though I was in a situation, I was young, I didn't know, but, and if you are struggling and you need help in the meantime, definitely seek help. And I always use the saying when I was growing up, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. And sometimes, I mean, I have a scar across my neck right here, where I almost died, and I have never had anything worse happen to me. And I've been able to get through even the hardest things, like putting myself through school, working through college, just so many tremendous things that I feel successful and fulfilled, like we were talking about earlier, in my life. So don't be afraid. There's a lot of people out there to help, and reach out if you need me.
I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you, and I absolutely. I guess I should do this. That's very kind of you to say that and to be there to support other people, and that's really the solution to all this. And this is what we're really getting at. We talk about RTS, religious trauma syndrome. What is the answer? The answer is community, to be there for each other, right? And that goes for anything. Anytime people are struggling with something in life. And leaving religion, deconstructing from this, leaving a cult is what it is, in my opinion. It's going to carry a certain amount of baggage. Gretchen, she mentioned something about how her story wasn't as I can't remember how dramatic or something like that. I can't remember how she worded it exactly. And the truth of the matter is that everyone's experience is valuable, right? All of our experiences carry value, because we shouldn't compare ourselves to other people when it comes to life experiences. It's a learning opportunity for everyone. Sometimes it's about, hey, look, that person isn't making mistakes and fucking their shit up all the time. Look at how well adjusted they are. It's not always, oh, look at how this person has screwed this up and had to overcome this and overcome that. They're doing such a great job now. Or look at what a screw up that person is and they're destroying their lives. We can learn from all situations. And so we all have equal value in that regard, because these are experiences, and I cannot physically experience every single thing there is to experience out there. And I've lived a very full life, so to speak, a lot of diverse experiences in my life, and I still can't experience everything that there is to experience out there, right? So I really value being able to share all of your experiences with you and to be able to learn from that. And so thank you so much, Jack, for sharing with us today. Arpy, you are up next on stage. Be sure to tell everybody where to find Async Network, right? I'm working towards 100. I'm getting pretty close. Async Network, that is.
All right. Well, first off, I want to thank OE for having me up today. Had a lot of fun being on this panel. Appreciate you every time you stop by Async. And yeah, check us out at sync, that's SYNC network. We'll be going live later tonight. And so, yeah, come stop by. I want to say hi to all the friends that we have in chat. Robin, Kif Webb, Nessie, Puggles, Missing Mod. Good to see all you in here. Yeah, thanks for hanging out. I guess to wrap up. Oh, hey JR, see you popping there in chat too. So to kind of wrap up, make sure that your beliefs are your own. Don't just let other people tell you what to believe. Make sure that like you have a reason to adopt those beliefs. Start with your epistemology. Make sure that that's sound, and work up from there. Develop your own worldview, be critical, but also have patience with yourself, because many times we are our own worst enemies. We're our own biggest critics, and we deserve love from ourselves. If we don't give love to ourselves, who is going to love you if you can't even love yourself? So yeah, that's about all I have to say. Oh, also, hey Nick too. Yeah, thanks again, OE, and I'm going to be looking forward to your debate coming up here in about 10 days on the Raging Tomato.
Sarah had to postpone because she's apparently got
Ooh.
invited to go moderate another debate in Vegas, and so we got put on the back burner, which I can't really blame a sister for that. It's Vegas, but she says she definitely still wants to do it. I'm actually waiting on Nobody on Fire to let me know what his availability is next month. So if you see him, will you like stoke that fire for me? Because Sarah has gotten a hold of me a couple times saying, "Hey, do you know when you guys want to reschedule this thing too?" And I'm literally just waiting on Nobody on Fire, but that is going to be a good debate. Objective morality is the position that Nobody on Fire and I both hold. And we're going to be debating two Christians on, can you have morality without God based on natural law, reason, or empathy? And Nobody on Fire and I are going to just kill those guys on that debate. I am very confident we're going to do really well.
Well, when that gets rescheduled, please let me know.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the plug, brother. Thank our family. Thank you so much as always.
I appreciate it.
I am looking more into getting into the atheist communities. If anyone would be interested, have me on.
Yeah, join
really
us
good
tonight
debate.
on Async. We allow anybody to come up and hang out on the panel.
Will do.
Awesome. Hope to see you there.
Thanks.
There we go. Okay, so I just want to thank everybody for stopping by today, and I'm really glad Jack mentioned that, because community. In fact, I want to switch over. Yeah, do check out the Async Network, everybody. They do have a great community over there. I've seen a lot of people popping in from their channel that I had a chance to meet through them already, and I've only been going there just a couple weeks. They have a lot of really very intelligent people, some really funny jokesters in the chat and stuff like that, and then there's some great debates and other stuff that they do. So it's a fun community. And there's a lot of channels in here that are doing a good job. Like I mentioned, Missing Mod. I saw her pop up at one point. I feel like Robin. Obviously, you need to check out Robin's channel, please. In fact, speaking of Robin's channel, let me see if I can find this. I do want to highlight this again. Robin has made it known that she can be a resource to help. I think she does work or has access to resources from recovering from religion, which is really relevant to today's topic, religious trauma syndrome. And I want to also plug, there's a video that I did called Courage Without Fear. I would really like everyone who might have the time to go watch that video and then post in the comments your own experiences of overcoming something difficult, because that's an opportunity for other people who go through those comments to get inspiration, to understand that nobody's in this life alone, right? Every one of us has struggled with something at some point. It's not just about religious trauma syndrome, but we've all had some kind of trauma, some difficulty that we've had to overcome. So please do check out Courage Without Fear. And if you're willing to share your own story, or maybe even a story that you've heard from someone else, please post it in the comments there. I actually have had somebody who was considering, that I know on another platform, a young lady who was very depressed because of the loss of one of her family members, her mother. And she was really struggling with thoughts of self-deletion. And so that's one of the people that inspired me to make that video, to let her know that, a lot of us have struggled in life, and there is a way out. There is a way forward. If don't give up, right? And so she watched that video, and she got a hold of me later and said that reading through those comments, watching that video actually inspired her, and she's changed her mind. She's getting into counseling and has really doing very well at this point. So that really encouraged me and inspired me. And there's other people who have left their own stories. There's people on this panel who are on this panel today who shared their stories in the comments in that video. And so you've all been a part of that young lady's success. And I just appreciate if you guys would consider doing that. The stories that were shared today were very inspirational, very heartbreaking as well, to know what people struggle with when they go through this religious trauma. When you're deconstructing, it can be a very difficult journey. I talked to another lady on a different platform that I met through Life Abolitionist, who was here earlier, I believe today, LA. And she's, I think, 4 years into her deconstruction, and told me that she's still struggling with it. So this is something that's going to affect everybody differently, because at the end of the day, we're all individuals, right? And so we do need to be there for each other as a community. I really like what Jack had to say about children, especially, right? Children are so vulnerable. Be doing a video, doing a lot of bonus content this month, which it's hard because of my work schedule, but there's been so much that's come up that I really wanted to be a part of. And I met a very impressive lady who's working so hard to defend children online. And we know that children are getting targeted online and in social media, and they're so impressionable, and when they're young. And so the ECHO Act, we'll be doing a video about that on Wednesday. Please do look into that. It's ECCHO, stands for Enforcement Against Coercion of Children and Harm Online. And it's a big bill that's going to be discussed on the 24th in Congress. It's a bipartisan bill. And as it was brought to my attention from Gretchen, I believe, and ARPI, that they are struggling because they have to fight 230. And it's when I was talking to the organizer, and we'll be talking about it on a Wednesday, apparently only 1% of the cases even get heard in Congress because of 230. So this is an uphill battle, but it's such an important fight. So please do get a hold of your local state representatives, your local congressman, whatever it might be. Let them know that you support this bill. Phone calls, emails, knock on their door. Whatever you have to do to represent, because we're fighting for children. Just like Jack was saying, children are so vulnerable. And we know that religious indoctrination starts when people are young. We know that these organized religions target people when they're at their most vulnerable state, even adults, right? But nobody's more vulnerable than a child. So that's why I want to speak out against this stuff. I'm not an anti-theist. I actually recognize that there can be good things in religion, and I don't try to pretend otherwise. You look at even something like the Bible, right? There's a lot of poetry, wisdom literature, a lot of stuff. Now, granted, I know because I study history and theology that a lot of that stuff is pulled from other sources, older sources, ancient sources. And so I don't even credit the Bible with it. But if that's a place where you can access the information, there's no shade in doing that, right? Go ahead and do that. But I encourage people to have solid foundations for what they believe to be true. I also encourage people to be skeptical with a healthy amount of skepticism, and be humble and acknowledge the fact that when we get new information, our beliefs are likely to be affected, and that's okay. We don't need to be so arrogant and so fragile that we have to hold on to believing something in the face of the evidence, right? We want to let the evidence speak for itself. And there is so much out there that we have access to that our parents even didn't have access to, our grandparents, great-grandparents. The further back in history you go, these people had no access to information, and yet we have it at the tips of our fingers. We carry a fucking computer around and in our pocket all the time. A supercomputer compared to what things used to be. It's called a cell phone, and everybody has one, right? We can Google something. We can look up, contradictions in the Bible. We can look up, is evolution true? We get all this kind of stuff literally is at our fingertips. So there's really no excuse to be uninformed, other than the fact that parents or other people who are coercing. I don't think I'm saying that right, but influencing or affecting or controlling through coercion, I guess is how I should say that. I'm so sorry. I think I'm getting too hungry for this. People who are controlling other people using coercion to prevent them from accessing this information, especially when it comes to children, right? Private schools that are not teaching evolution, they're teaching creationism, controlling the narrative, stuff like that. That's the only excuse that people really have. But as far as adults go, we really have a responsibility to search things out, search for the truth, look for evidence, cross-reference the evidence, right? And double and triple check ourselves. Just cross the T's and dot the I's. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for such a great show. We had a really great turnout today, and I really appreciate all the participation. Good to see you.
Channel. 3.30 through repeating, of course. That's better than I've done before. And Deacon Brennan, what do you do? Wait, objective ethics will be on your plate.